And we're back.
Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram.
Today we are catching up on our softcover pile, although some of it will be a little more digital in nature than others. Joining us to help catch up on our reviews is the Everman Gamer, Mr. Alex Augunas.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Alex. And the always insightful Andrew Marlowe.
Hello.
How are you two doing?
Good. Good. My first semester of graduate courses are winding down, so things are pretty good.
And you are still breathing.
I'm amazed that they're winding down already. It feels like your semester just started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've just been prepping for you to say I'm starting classes. I guess, oops.
Don't you dare say that, Ryan. No, actually, semester 2 starts the second week of May. So this will be next week is week 15, which is the last week, and then I get a week off, which is my birthday week, which is great. And then the week after that, I start my summer semester, and that goes until the first week of August. Then I get the last end of August off, and so then when I come back from Gen Con, I go back to the fall classes.
All right, we're not going to dwell on this because we do have topics to talk about, and then banter to get to, so we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But just, is that typical? Because that's not how school works in Canada.
I don't know. This is the only time I've ever done graduate classes.
It's
true.
that
Maybe
sounds
it's a
like an
graduate thing.
accelerated course. Somebody who works at a college, that sounds like an accelerated course.
All right, Andrew, what's new and exciting with you?
Not a whole lot. Not yet, at least.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Ooh,
Let's just say I'm
mysterious.
working on making some changes in my daytime schedule, so that maybe I will have more time to get writing in and things.
Oh, cool. But nothing you want to get into right now?
Not until more of it's set in stone.
Oh,
Then I will have no follow-up questions. Except, what do you guys think of the player companion line? So we are going to be starting with 3 hits from the player companion line. They're all from this year, or is Healer's Handbook? Yeah, Healer's Handbook might be late 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into the specific titles we're talking about, I would say that the player's companion line is one of the more influential lines for the Pathfinder role-playing game. Sometimes it feels like people use more options from the player's companion lines that are similar to the hardcovers in theme than the options from the hardcovers themselves. So let's start with you, Andrew. Just overall, how do you feel about the player companion line?
I like it a lot. I might be a little biased. It is my one publishing credit with Paizo.
Mhm.
I do. I was hoping you'd hit somebody else first so I could think about it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Generally speaking, though, I do like the player companion line, and yeah, you're gonna have to hit somebody else. My brain is
True.
just not functioning today, right?
No problem. Alex, you've got a fair number of credits in the player companion line too, so you're also probably going to be pretty biased. But how do you feel about this line? As unbiased as you can make it.
Extraordinarily biased. So how I feel about the line, I feel that the hardcover rule books that Paizo puts out are a place for new rules and systems and ideas to first be created, but it's the player companion line that takes those ideas and really fleshes them out and gives them a home in the Pathfinder world, I guess you could say. Whether you're talking both from like a literal sense in, hey, how does this work in Golarion, to, hey, we might need some more content here, or wouldn't it be really cool if we did this with this particular rule set idea? Things that there are oftentimes things pop up in the player companion that you're like, wow, if there was more room in the core rulebook line, I could see this premiering alongside of that cool chakra system or whatever. So to me, I would say the player companion line is an essential part of the evolution of the game and its rules.
I almost wish they wouldn't include archetypes for new classes in the hardcover book, because it feels like they don't quite know what they want the archetypes to be until they get to the player companion line.
I don't know. I think it depends a lot on what you're given to work with. Different books, themed books tend to have, in my opinion, stronger archetypes than unthemed books because at least post advanced class guide, if you're not going to put a theme on an archetype, it's basically going to be mesh X with Y and get Z. So I think that having that theme really makes the content within it shine in a way that people just wouldn't come up with. I think pressure makes the best diamonds, so to speak.
I think that the core rule book, or the core rulebook line, or the RPG line rather, um, is very good on its archetypes at filling the niches that are obvious that need to be filled mechanically. Like, this is the Magus that uses two-handed weapons. This is the Magus that uses a polearm. This is the Magus that punches you in the face. Those things are kind of required, especially when you have a class that has a lot of different options. Like, you really couldn't have released the vigilante without the archetype section. That needed that badly. But all the good flavor, of course, is in the player's companion line. That's where it ties into Galarian. I don't know that that's going to be so much true going forward, given what we talked about last episode, though, where the RPG line and the campaign setting are blurring. I mean, they're having their Crisis on Infinite. Well, just the one Galarian, but soon to be two.
Well, you have to figure that like this year is the first year in 3, maybe 4 years that we haven't had more than one new class get published in a single year.
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of classes that need big archetype dumps, so to speak, is going down.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that it makes sense that, let's move some of this elsewhere, so to speak, and try new things. Do you have thoughts now, Andrew?
Yeah, well, about trying new things, and I think the player companion line really does stretch what it actually means to do some of those core concepts. It helps them, when you've got a bunch of authors that are focused, like you said, on a single topic, they can really make the most of that topic in the companion line because it is so focused.
As someone who's worked on the hardcover line and on the player companion line, the other thing I'll say is, like, since you have so many, like a fewer number of people working on a player companion, ideas usually get shot around more and there's more collaboration. Like when you're one of, I don't know, 12-ish people working on a hardcover and you have your one section and the other guy is doing something totally different than you, I don't think ideas circulate as much. So I really like the player companion line for my ability to see the thought processes of other people that I work with or wouldn't otherwise get to chat with during the production. But that's more of like an insider thing than a consumer thing.
Which I think brings us to a disclaimer that would be important to mention to our listeners right about now, Perram.
Yeah, several of our members of our network, Alex, Louise, Andrew, I'm probably missing like half of the others, write often for Paizo, and Alex and Louise and Andrew's one credit are in the player companion line, including some of the books we'll be talking about today. Now, nobody here is allowed to review their own book.
Yep.
That's going to be hard in stone, but just keep in mind we're not a completely unbiased source here. We've been horribly contaminated by a wealth of good writers.
Yeah, it's gotten to the point that if we only chose things to support people on the network, we would be reviewing things constantly.
Yeah. Or if we tried to avoid reviewing things that somebody in the network has had a hand in, it would just be the pawn sets.
I mean, to be fair, like I told you guys when you asked me to come on, I was like, if we're only doing player companions, like there's literally one book in the past year I can do that's not the one Perram's doing. So, I mean, I'm sorry if that's braggarty or whatever, but it was more of like a logistical, like I need this book or that book, your pick.
Yeah, and I also want to point out, or one of my things that I believe the player companion line fills is Paizo has a legacy that goes back before Pathfinder, and that is as probably the best publishers that the Dungeon and Dragon magazine had ever had, and the player companion line is where that Dungeon magazine legacy still shows through, both in the layout, the good layout they choose, the wealth of material, different thoughts. You see these short form articles that you often see there. That is where it shines and where you can still see the old Paizo.
On that note, I think we can get started, and I will be focusing on the oldest of the 3 books we're covering, although, like I said, it's either late 2016, early 2017, and that is the Healer's Handbook. So this is, of course, relevant to the character I'm currently playing in Hell's Rebels, which would be an Oracle of Bones, who, after some recent sessions, is trying to up her healing game. First thing I want to bring attention to is the inside cover. And I will often call out the inside cover when I think it's particularly clever or a good use of this space, because there's no formula to what goes on the inside cover. Sometimes it's charts, sometimes it's just summaries of what you'll find later in the book. But in Healer's Handbook, it's one of the things that I like. It's when they really visualize and add like a real context, a real like in-world feel to what's otherwise a very simple mechanic. So in this case, it's the anatomy of a healer's kit. And healer's kit has, I think, maybe 12 words dedicated to it in the entire core rulebook, even though it's a pretty essential piece of equipment if you're this type of character. So to have it laid out with 5 or 6 different instruments that you're going to see inside of it, a little bit of more flavor. It's like 5 pieces of art. I doubt they're original art. They're probably all from equipment cards. But to have this much art dedicated to this simple piece of equipment, suddenly when I bust out my healer's kit or use doses from it with, usually I wouldn't think about that. Going forward, I will have more of a thought. I will be able to add a little bit more to a scene by saying specifically the ointments I'm taking out, what I'm doing with my herbs, etc. So right off the bat, inside cover has already got me hooked on this book. Let's see how it goes from here. Oh, the introduction. This was something I wanted to talk about when we were doing the overview. I often find the introductions a little much. Sometimes we get a 2-page spread explaining what really has already been summarized very well by the title. The Player's Companion line has the most self-explanatory titles. This is the Healer's Handbook. I do not need a whole lot of words introducing the idea of what a healer is and how its handbook will help a healer. And fortunately in this one, introduction is barely an introduction. We get a couple of paragraphs pointing out the basics of healing, and then we go right into healers on Galarian and right away into Crunch. Like already on the first page, we've got a trait, which I know the game's already got a lot of traits. This book, as is common in the Player's Companion line, introduces many more, over a dozen. And yet I actually got really excited reading a lot of them. A lot of these are some of the more clever mechanics, and they are continuing to find new ways to develop familiar mechanics. So probably one of the themes in the Healer's Handbook is that a lot of these just give a +1 where you usually don't get a +1. In this case, a lot of times it gives you a +1 to the amount of healing you're doing in a specific circumstance, and that specific circumstance is tied into the trait. A couple of the traits in the introduction page, though, are really different. Well, they're similar to each other, but they're different from anything else I'd ever seen before. You've got the Prestigious Healer, which is related to Cheliax. Once per day as an immediate action, when you cast a spell of the healing subschool, you can attempt a diplomacy check to improve the attitude of the target or someone within 30 feet who can see you. So it's just like, look at my glorious healing. Yes, I will help you. Don't you love me now? And then even stranger, although it's appropriate given that it's an Irizen version of the trait, is that after you heal someone, you can intimidate them or someone else. So it because it's Irizen, immediately I go more to witches, and that's how it makes more sense as like a visual, as a scene. And it's like, oh, you think that you can damage my allies? Oh, I've got all their pain covered, my friends. Intimidate because I healed someone. It's very strange, but it's very evocative, and that's one of my favorite types of mechanics.
If healers are intimidating, can they also get antagonized then?
Yes, but why?
It's built in anyway.
Yes.
Because they're paladins. Come at me, bro.
Fair enough. Yeah, when we're talking about healers, it does do a very good job of covering all the different types of healers. And that includes paladins. It includes alchemists get a 2-page spread. But of course, it also starts with the houses of healing, and this one is very cleric focused. It's a 4-page section, and it's got 2 cleric archetypes. No, it's got 3 cleric archetypes, as well as a wizard archetype and a monk archetype. So, one thing I do want to point out: the book uses a lot of geography to divide up its sections, which I think is a little bit strange, but ultimately does help make the book stand out. Or at least it's different from my expectations without beating my expectations or falling short of them. But the one area that this does become strange is that most of the traits are region traits, which means you can take religion or magic traits and still also get these really cool healer-based traits. It's probably not going to break the game to have a character that has 2 traits that give a bonus to the same part of their build, but that always goes against what the trait was originally intended. The traits, you can have 2 of the same category, specifically so that you're not loading up in that one area to try and diversify what your character can do. This just goes like, well, because you're from this region, you're this type of good healer.
Well, don't forget that if it's a trait bonus, they don't stack anyway.
No. So yeah, it wouldn't be to the specific, like it wouldn't be to the same heal check, but if like one of my things is to a heal check and the other one is to my cure spells, then all I'm doing is being good at it as a healer instead of being good as a healer who's also maybe a little bit tougher than most healers, or, you know, it's just like a single focus for a character instead of a little bit more or a little variety. Variety is the word I should have said much earlier on in this point. So a couple of highlights of this section. You've got the Sacred Attendant, which is a cleric archetype, which you basically give up armor proficiencies for an AC bonus and a lot of buff abilities. It's actually, I'm a little concerned that this one doesn't give up enough. And most people, I think, when you're building your cleric character, this should be immediately one of the archetypes you look at because it gives up some minor things to gain some fairly useful things like inspiring camaraderie at 8th level as a swift action whenever a Sacred Attendant casts a cure spell that targets a single ally. The Sacred Attendant can infuse the ally with inspired vigor for a number of rounds equal to half the... okay, what's the bonus here? Okay, gives them a competence bonus equal to the Sacred Attendant's cleric level on attack rolls. So
handy.
By giving up nothing to gain that ability, other than giving up the armor that you've given up previously, you could give a person a small buff every time you heal them.
Well, by giving up the armor, they're giving up the front line. Keep in mind that a normal cleric is very capable of being a frontline fighter. So basically, you're giving up an entire aspect of your character.
I was just talking about the variety that you lose from the traits. And yeah, this is actually giving up variety. So you're right, Perram. Maybe mechanically, you're not, or sorry, like statistically, you're not giving up a lot, but you are giving up a pretty big play option there.
I'd like to argue that celestial armor makes it not matter.
Oh,
because
how fast is that bonus?
So nimble is the Sacred Attendant gains a dodge bonus when unarmored, unencumbered, and not denied their dex. So even celestial armor is armor.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
Celestial
you don't
armor is
just go
good,
down
but
to
it's not
light.
that good.
We also have the Disciple of Wholeness, which is a monk that specializes in a little bit of healing, and I like it because it's a good enough healer that if nobody wants to play the healer, somebody can still play a fairly competent melee combatant with a little bit of healing to them.
Imperiosaur is also pointing out that they also lose 1 domain.
Do they? Yes, you're right. They only choose 1 domain. Okay, that evens things out a little bit.
It's not like a
That's
cleric had all
significant.
that much to give up anyway. They're kind of like wizards, man. They barely have anything. They always lose the same things.
Yeah, I think clerics have the fewest number of archetypes, at least from the base, from the core rulebook, just because there's very little on that class chart. Although when they figured out that you can give up a certain number of spells, like here, the Angel Fire Apostle comes later. That's a cleric of Serenre.
Mm-hmm.
Or Serenre and Serenre type gods, where you're giving up. How is it verbalized? He can cast diminished spellcasting. Angel Fire Apostle is less concerned with traditional divine magic than many religious adherents receive. He gets no spells. No, there we go. He receives one fewer spell slot at each spell level. That's a pretty significant sacrifice, but he gains a whole bunch of cool fire-based abilities, although I would have liked more fire and earlier fire, because your main fire ability is cleansing flames, and you only get that at 9th level. Later on in this chapter, we've got a section called Evil Healers. And this is probably the section that I was most disappointed in, because just with the way positive and negative energy works, it means that good actually has an advantage over evil in any given campaign setting, because it is harder for evil to keep itself alive. And in a campaign, you shouldn't feel like the heroes have an advantage over evil. That's just it's less heroic in that way. So I was looking forward to ways that Paizo would find to supplement this, to make it so that evil can, survive a little bit longer in like a worldview type of way. And instead, we only get 3 feats, and none of them are really like the main feat you would want for this. Like if this was a 2-page spread just dedicated to evil healers, all 3 of these feats would fit on that 2-page spread. But if you're going to say we're going to support evil healers, you're getting exactly 3 feats. None of these are that. None of them are the feat that you would want. One of them, conditional spell. It's laid out like conditional favor, and it's meta magic feat that just when you cast the spell, something else happens, and it has very little to do with the category. Insidious healing. Any character can choose not to attempt a saving throw against your healing spells, but then they get a -4 penalty on your saving throws against other targeted spells from you. So basically, if I offer to heal you and you say yes, you have given yourself a -4 penalty to my future spells. Definitely evil, but it again not helping with the survival. And then finally, painful cures. Whenever you use a spell to restore hit points to a living creature, you cause that creature to be racked with waves of searing pain. Interesting. But none of them are just, this is how you will channel positive energy a certain number of times, just so that you're keeping your non-undead allies alive. That's what I needed. I just needed one thing that says, this will keep you and your allies alive more.
It is kind of the weird thing about evil being associated with negative energy and good being associated with positive energy, because you kind of get into this weird idea where like evil never wants to keep its friends alive, and that just seems kind of weird. And also the majority of evil deities don't include undead in their portfolio, so it's like the whole healing the undead thing is kind of strange. I don't have any other comments on that section other than that.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's baggage from like ages of Dungeons and Dragons. Negative energy has always been undead.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if there was a feat to unpack some of that baggage, or to offer you a nice leather varnish for your baggage.
Well, also, but it does point out that the evil characters can heal. They just can't heal with channel positive energy. They can memorize cure light wounds, and they can't cast it spontaneously. And the fact that there are feats in there that when you do heal, you do these extra things, means that evil very well can heal. And besides, healing during combat's the weaker option anyway.
Perram, that is a loaded statement, and we do not have time to go into that right now.
I will stand by that till
I know you can
my
stand
dying
by
day.
it, but I don't want to go into you defending it.
Listen, you can stand by it all you want. It doesn't make it right. But let's continue.
Sure. This section then this section concludes with healing spells.
Are you below me? Like
what? Oh,
isn't he like in the box that's like?
No. I am in the top left. It is my box.
The section concludes, guys, with healing spells, and I was surprised with the versatility of these spells. There's 6 of them, and in the game when Cure Light Wounds and the variety of spells that come from that pretty much cover the healing you're going to need, they do. Whoever designed this section managed to find new ways to. Just new ways to have a little bit more fun and add a little variety to it. Purify Body, for example, is a higher level spell then I believe it's Cure Serious. Yeah, it does 3d8 plus 1 per caster level, but it's a 4th level spell. Its advantage is that any extra healing above your total, you get as temporary hit points. So it's a good alternative to Cure Serious if you know somebody's taking a little bit of damage, you want to be fresh in the next combat. You can be fresh and then some. And actually, Inspiring Recovery is another this and then some. It's Breath of Life plus a morale buff. You're so happy to be brought back to life after nearly dying that you just get up and you want to just tackle the world.
It's good. I mean, the situation's pretty bad, and you're going to need that. I mean, assuming that the player has just hit the floor and flatlined, the morale bonus is more important than just yay goody.
I mean, clearly it's Fairly Odd Parents. I can breathe. I can fight. I might be too young to be giving references. Shoot.
Are you? I just consider you the young one on the network. I don't even know if you're the youngest, but
James
you make
is
all those
actually
kids
younger than
references. James is younger? By
Only
a lot?
By a month.
Oh.
I'm pretty
also-
sure Louise is in our age category too, you old timers.
Oh,
That's directed directly at like that part.
The old
of
ones?
The screen.
the old
Yes.
ones.
Well, you're the young one today, Alex. Next up, we have 2 pages on alchemical aid, and I like this. So alchemy is its own... it's this tiny little thing that exists and takes up a fair amount of the rules, but really could be a whole lot more because, yes, it's mainly the avenue of the alchemist, but the alchemist has a lot of archetypes, and each of the archetypes makes the alchemist very different. And so even though it's one class, it is really a class that covers a large category. And the investigator is one of the more popular hybrid classes, and it uses alchemy. And a lot of the archetypes from the advanced class guide added alchemical elements to their classes. So technically, this 2-page spread is very much covering the alchemist, and there's 2 archetypes. Both of them are alchemist archetypes, but there's actually a lot more variety to the way you can use this alchemical stuff than it may at first appear. The two archetypes. I like them both. One of them is the alchemical. Not the alchemist healer. That's the traits, because every section has traits. There's just so many traits in this game. The Wasteland Blightbreaker. This is an alchemist that again adds a little bit more healing and only gives up a little bit. In this case, it gives up a lot of poison stuff. So poison resistance and poison use. It's worse at poison but better at healing. It's another class that if you were considering a baseline alchemist, I would consider this because it doesn't have any elaborate subsystem. It's really just, here's a little bit more healing. It's unique to the Blightbreaker how it heals. It's a Healy alchemist without being like alchemist healer. My one thought, though, is that I do find it strange. It's the Wasteland Blightbreaker. It's supposed to come from the Mana Waste. Doesn't feel like someone from the Mana Waste should be giving up poison resistance. So a good archetype with a strange direction given the flavor. Then the other one is the the Sacrament Alchemist, and it has what I think is the most clever rules in the book, the rule implementation. The Sacramental Cognatogen gives up mutagen, and you drink it, you get your -2 penalty to dexterity, and then instead of getting just a straight stat boost, you get the benefit of your god, because you do need to worship a god to be this. Faithful is one of the class features, and it just means you have to worship a god. You get one of their domain abilities by drinking your cognatogen, your Sacramental Cognatogen. I had never considered that kind of design, and it's true. There's a lot of really useful abilities that you could imagine being purified into some kind of divine elixir. And so this class only has a couple of class features. That's a really clever one. And actually another archetype later on in the book has a very similar one. I forget which class it is, but this is the first one that I read with that uses that idea. So I'm going to give it a lot of credit. That's really clever design right there.
So look, Alex, it's another Korth buildie, and we still can't get Arcanas on Bloodlines anywhere.
Maybe you can go find an Arcano Cognigen.
Ooh.
Next up, we have the Battlefield Medicine, and this section actually is one of those hangups I have with the player companion line, in that it introduces a new system, and that new subsystem takes up a lot of this section. In this case, it's focused blessings, which are like, what do you call them? Subdomains. They're like subdomains, but for war priests. And that's great, except it takes up a page and a bit of this 2-page section. So it's specifically for one class, and each of these, that one class only gets one of these options. So it's a whole bunch of options that are really for a very, very small group of people. But on top of that, it only covers 6 of the blessings for a class that has 20, 30 blessings in total. So it's at the same time not enough page space given to really bring this concept home, but too much page space dedicated from this 2-page spread to this one concept. Like, this is something that I hope gets further and further expanded in future player companions. But then again, I don't know how popular the War Priest is, so I don't know if it's actually worth the space.
Is it just, are the ones that they use, are those Healy?
Yes, they are.
I'm not sure how many blessings is that all of the War Priest does Healy blessings?
No.
No.
Okay.
So
Yeah, like what you would, if there was a destruction blessing in this book, you would probably be ranting about how destruction got content and how they could have used that for something else.
Unless they were using the destruction to, obliterate wounds.
Ooh, I like obliterate wounds. That is such a much better concept than curing them.
That could have gone in the evil healers.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't actually have any issue. I actually really like all of the blessings. In fact, as I was reading them, because I'm not as familiar with the War Priest, I was comparing what you gain to what you lose. They're all pretty interesting swaps. Like, it's always, this is something I can see some people taking, but it's not something I think everyone just will automatically default take. So, good design, but weird pagination. No, pagination is not the right word. Weird logistics.
You think the word you're looking for is layout?
It's because it's not the layout; it's the amount of space that was committed to this. It's laid out fine. It looks.
I think the phrase he's looking for is impossible to satisfy, and will never like this page spread.
Why do I have a feeling you're particularly biased on these pages, Alex?
All right, you know what it is? It's a paradox. It's at the same time too much space and not enough space.
And that's when
Do you know what it
created
is?
itself.
I wrote cool stuff about gods, and Ryan didn't even notice.
Oh.
No, Alex, I was pretty sure you did write this stuff. Next up, we have Healing Feats and Wild Talents. A little bit weird as a section, because the Wild Talents we only get a couple of. That's to make your Kineticist a little bit more of a healer. The Wild Talents are fine. There's only 2 of them. We're not going to spend too much time on that. But overall, I really like this section. There is a new series of feats called Vigor Feats. It turns you into basically someone that can heal yourself. It's only a little bit. You get a number of vigor points equal. I like feats that give you points, even though I don't like spending non-renewable, or it's a renewable resource. I don't like spending resources, but I do like systems that grant them. It's another paradox, we'll say. So as a standard action, you gain 1d6 hit points per vigor point you spend, but each time you spend vigor points, you are fatigued for 1 minute. So the default one is like, yeah, this is a good healing option if you're a low healing party, but it's not something you can do in the middle of combat, whether you agree with Perram or whether you agree with Alex about how effective of a tactic that is. But what's nice is that then there's like 4 follow-up feats. So one of them turns it from 1 minute to 3 rounds. One of them, fortuitous vigor. Oh yeah, whenever you get a natural 20 on an ability check, attack roll, saving throw, or skill check, you can spend more vigor as a swift action there. And each of these vigor points gives you a bonus vigor point for your pool. So it starts as a number of vigor points equal to your constitution bonus. But if you become like a vigor specialist, you actually can get a whole bunch more. So as you get more options, you also get more points to spend on it. It's just good, solid design. I am also going to bring attention to Unconquerable Resolve. mostly because it's a samurai option. Samurais never get options geared specifically for that class, so that's nice to see. I would have liked if because their prerequisites are both having the Resolve class feature and Samurai first level. I would have liked it if it was just the Resolve class feature, therefore opening it up to these hybrid archetypes where it's like, well, now I'm a fighter, but I get the Resolve class feature. Suddenly he's not allowed to get this one. But otherwise, anytime you spend a daily use of your Resolve, you gain 1 temporary hit point per hit dice you have. It's a small bonus, but it's perfectly in theme. It's giving a class that does not get a lot of toys a small toy, and I could see most samurais taking this.
I forgot samurai existed.
Most people do.
Yep. Well, this book didn't forget them. Let's see. I'm going to
that
be a
book
little
totally
bit quick.
didn't forget them.
This is cheating.
Listen, this is way more fun than interjecting.
All right, so we're about halfway through the book, and I feel like I've taken up a lot of time. So next up, we've got healing hexes, mostly witch-focused, although hexes is something that, like I was just talking about, resolved hybrid archetypes, they like to borrow a little bit of hexes. No one will ever be a master of hexes like the witch, but some classes gain access to a hex or two. And I think this was all satisfactory. So nothing to point out as particularly good. Oh, the healing performances. Bards are I'm going to say they're the original alternate healer. So everyone knows clerics were your number one guy, but when it was just the core rulebook and in previous editions, the bard was the class you would take if you were willing to do a little bit of healing, but you didn't want to get stuck as the healer. The Solacer archetype is a great theme for a bard medic and also a strong archetype. So Learned Physician is an interesting idea because it takes away a little bit of your Jack of all trades knowledge, but not all of it. So you can still take 10 on knowledge skills. It's just can take 10 on knowledge checks. He has skill ranks in. So I believe normally you can take 10 on all of them. This one lets you. Wait a second. Can't you always take 10 on checks with any knowledge skill you have ranks in?
No, not if you're distracted.
This doesn't specifically say you can always do it, though. It just says you can take 10.
Then it probably suffered from the same issue that the original Bard wrote, and there was like an errata for it.
Okay.
So I'd imagine the errata applies, but I'm not Paizo.
Fair enough. In any case, it gives up like half a class feature to then modify that class feature to include more options for healing. And it adds heal to the Bard's class skill, which I just now realize is not on the Bard class skill, which is a weird skill to not give the Bard, considering what I was just saying about how they are backup healers in at least my point of view.
I've been in plenty of parties where Bard is main heal.
Yeah, and yet the heal skill is apparently not on the Bard's skill list. Well, it is for the Solacer, and one of the two traits here gives you heal as a class skill. Funny enough, the Faith Singer, which is the other Bard archetype here, which uses the same idea of giving you access to domain powers. Mm-hmm. This archetype does not get heal. So luckily, if you're taking the Faith Singer, you can still take the Godless Resolve. Oh, nope. Faith Singer and Godless Resolve don't sound like they go great together, but mechanically, one gives you the heal skill, and the other one makes you a healer.
Well, I mean, that is thematic, but I guess if you want any particular skill on your class list, there's usually a trait for that.
True. All right, Mysterious Cures. This focuses on oracles. There's an oracle archetype that focuses on herbalism and the Succor mystery. Natural Cures. This is the Druid and actually I was going to say Druid and Ranger section, but there's no Ranger options. There's just the Restorer archetype and the Nature Priest archetype. And unfortunately, the Restorer archetype is the only thing I really want to call out as I don't like this option. There's two things about it that I don't like. One of them, the first class feature is Healing Touch. A Restorer gets a +2 bonus on heal checks, but when he uses heal to provide first aid, the bonus increases to +3. So it's a +2 at all times, except it's a +3 in one specific circumstance. And it's like such a minor difference between the bonuses for one specific thing that you have to keep track of when you're doing this one use of that skill. Why not just make it a flat +2 or a flat +3? That +1 is only going to make a difference in that the person might regret that they forgot to add it, or they will have to look up constantly what one use of heal they get the bonus to. But then the other thing, guide across lifetimes. You get this at 13th level. Once per day, it's full round action. Restorer can cast Reincarnate without a material component.
Handy.
That's it. Once per day, Reincarnate.
I hope you don't need it more than once per day.
I have beef with reincarnates. That's not as cool with me.
No.
But I mean, as far as ways to come back to life, once per day without use of a material component?
Handy? I mean, have you ever heard Dan the Bard's Owlbear song?
No.
Okay. Everybody should look that up if they can. The basic song is about reincarnation, and that would enable that song to be possible.
All right. I'm just going to wrap up here with my thoughts. I think the Healer's Handbook is really good, but it's mostly good if you're starting a brand new character, because most of the traits are either archetypes or... most of the options are archetypes or traits. That's one of the things that happens with the player companion line as well. It's not always geared towards all types of characters. Like, there's at least one spell I'm definitely going to be taking. I believe it was Healing Token. And I have my eye on a couple of feats, but more for other characters I could be playing. And like, I definitely can see myself playing a vigor-focused fighter in the future. But otherwise, I'm playing the party's healer, and I was looking for a couple of options. And as a 5th level character, or 6th level character, I don't have a whole lot of options for me. So that's the only caveat. Good design, a wide variety of things, and it covers just about every base I could think of when it comes to healers, the only exception being Evil healers, which is more something that it didn't meet my expectations rather than something that I think a player will really get use out of. Although I guess with Hell's Vengeance, more options for making a viable healer would have been good. But anyway, otherwise, overall, great book, but only a good book if you're not making a brand new healer.
Mm-hmm.
How many stars out of 5?
Well, we never do that on this show.
5.
Oh, never?
Nah, 4. I can't give it 5 because I am the healer and I can only think of one option in the whole book that I want.
It sounds like it does do one of the things that feels my biggest gripes with Pathfinder, which is there just aren't enough options to be a pure healer, and it sounds like this book at least addresses a little bit of that. Though it does also strengthen the 2 classes that are already very good at it, but a lot of the classes that weren't got more healy. That's good. I just don't.
I think one of the things that I personally could have used more options, because my Oracle's curse is that I'm lame, is ranged healing. There are things, it's just you have to build towards being able to do healing at range. I would have liked a couple of either easier options or just something that makes that a little easier for me, because I do not get to the people that need me as quickly as they need me to.
Do the spells need to be ranged, or you? Because I'm thinking, throwing you might be a better solution.
Okay.
Telekinetic charge. Go on, get a wizard friend. He can throw you at people who need to be healed.
We do not have that.
Do you have a barbarian?
We had a blood rager.
Oh,
she was a gnome,
so you're not
and
doing
she
your
recently
job very
died
good, huh?
because I couldn't get to her.
Oh.
Also, I was well, no, this was underwater, and I have a strength penalty, so I could not move. So that was
invested.
Anyway, we'll talk about this in the banter section. But yeah, a little bit more either options to make healers more mobile, which is a weirdly specific thing. I don't know if I want a spell that lets me do bladed dash, but it's bladed dash healing. So heal dash, yes.
Yeah, I can see that, because you've got like the combat medics and running through, head down, running through the firefight.
Well, I'm writing that down.
Pathfinder.
Healing dash. All right, noted.
while he's noting that, I think I'm up next, aren't I?
Yes,
You
your book.
are. What are
is
you
it?
reviewing, Alex?
All right, my book is one of the two that I mentioned that I did not write in the past year. So that is Heroes of the High Court. So the Heroes series is like an ongoing thing in the Pathfinder player companion line that started like around last year. There's Heroes of the Streets, there's Heroes of the Wilds, now there's Heroes of the High Courts. And honestly, like I didn't know what to expect going into this one because to me, like a lot of what this book is has already been done in like there's there's Inner Sea Intrigue, there's Spy
Ultimate.
Master's Handbook,
Oh, yeah.
Ultimate Intrigue, Heroes of the Streets. Like this, I wasn't sure what this wanted to be, honestly. So I kind of went in just more curious than anything, and it opens up with a spread that in our an inside cover that looks at different types of signet rings. And honestly, this kind of disappointed me because instead of like going through and like drawing out some major signet rings of major noble families throughout Galarian, it came up with these really like generic signet rings. So like one's ancient family, Gothic church, coastal power. I'm like, what if this was like Blackros, Thrune? I would love to see what Thrune's signet ring looks like. Like there's so many major noble families throughout Galarian that I guess like this just kind of didn't catch me at all. It's way too generic in my opinion, but that's all it is. It's my opinion.
I do believe
Um,
that Thrune's signet ring is just a picture of Asmodeus saying, "Got your nose."
So the introduction starts off with this awesome picture of Jirel, the iconic swashbuckler, besting a red mantis assassin who is apparently going to try to murder Sione, who's sitting on this awesome throne. And can you not see it?
You
Here.
need to aim.
There we
There
go.
we go.
Yeah. It's a great picture. I love this picture. Honestly, the art in this one is really good. It starts off with a brief description of what courtly life is like throughout Galarian, and it lists a whole bunch of cities and gives a couple of sentences about where those cities are and what kind of people live in them. It covers the Black Dome, which is the inside of the giant beetle carcass in the middle of Solthis in Osirian. Castle Overwatch in Lastwall. The Imperial Palace of Irgorian for Cheliax, the Imperial Palace of Opera in Taldor, the Palace of Fallen Stars in the Silver Mount, because in case you wanted to do high court intrigue in Numeria. And there's Queen Edusarel's court in Keonan, and the Umbral court in Nadal. And there's a quick trait that goes with all of them. The one trait that really stood out to me is called Rider's Bond. It goes with the last wall stuff. If you have a horse animal companion, it gets 2 bonus tricks. That's like a huge benefit. Nothing gives bonus tricks in this game. Nothing except the hunter class, and it gets them as like class features. So like I was like, whoa, this is really strong if you want to have a horse. And in a different book that there's a whole bunch of genie horses too, which it presumably works with.
There are genie horses.
Genie
Yeah,
horses
awesome.
sound great.
Yeah, it's in the Kadira book, the one that Jessica Price did pretty much almost everything on. I think John Compton is in there too, but she really spearheaded it from what all of the Facebook and Paizo forum posts say. Anyway, there's a great opening spread called Playing a Noble that basically just has feats that build off of the Noble Scion feat. Noble
nice.
Scion. Yeah, Noble Scion's a feat that like you get a small bonus towards knowledge nobility and another bonus based on what type of noble your family is. So some of them like add better versions. There's a list of alternate Noble Scion options for the Noble Scion feat, depending on which city in Galarian your noble family comes from. So like there's an Absalom version, there's a Breviary bonus version, there's a Cheliax version. Reading over it, though, honestly, most of the ones in the core feat are better than the ones that are listed here. There are a couple that are really good, but there's also some that are just kind of, I guess that's a thing, Like, There's one that's like, oh, once per day, if you're targeted by a psychic spell, you can re-roll it with a +2 bonus, and it's like, I don't know. There's a bunch of story feats that go with it. There's things that give you more money. Lots of really cool noble options. I really like the noble stuff in that, even if some of the city ones, they're not my cup of tea. One of this book is filled with great art. Like I said, one of them is this picture of Lem as a court jester on the next spread that I'm going to talk about. Which
It's a good-looking
is,
gesture. Are you sure it's Lem?
oh, it's absolutely Lem. Like, you can't
Yep.
see it here. It is totally 100% Lem. It is his face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
It is. So did his brother do that to him?
He
That's
might-
like punishment.
So, there is a court fool bard archetype to go with it. And it's actually a surprisingly cool archetype. Like, if it like, I don't know if I would want to dress up like that, but one of the abilities that it gets is you can make acrobatics checks to, it's basically, the best way to put it is that it's countersong, but you use acrobatics to counter confusion and fascinate effects. So hey, your friends get hit by confusion, acrobatics checks, now all of a sudden they're not confused. It's really strong. It's really niche, but it's really strong. There's also one where you can diffuse tension. It lets you get rid of shaken, fatigue, and basically by making people laugh. It's called diffuse tension. And you can also lose Lore Master in order to take 10 on acrobatics and bluff checks, and on bluff checks to make, and you can use a swift action to take bluff checks to hide. So, like, if you want to be a court jester who snipes, this is really crazy good, because swift action, I'm hiding, and I'm immediately, you're pretty much gonna, do your thing and then disappear. Or if you're gonna be, sneaking around, period. There's also a court poet, which, it's a really weird Scald archetype. So basically, you rage, but instead of raging your physical stats, your strength and your con, you get bonuses to your intelligence and charisma from the rage. It's called Inspired Contemplation. And as far as I know, it doesn't cause you to. You can't use strength-based checks or do anything that requires physical effort or concentration check while you have this song going, and it doesn't fatigue you. So it's basically the opposite of rage, and it's really quite clever. It would be a song that you would want to inspire your wizards for, because casting a spell doesn't require any of those things, but especially if you're a psychic. But you totally wouldn't want your fighters to take it in battle, because then all of a sudden they can't do anything. It does replace Inspired Rage. The other thing they get is they lose Song of Strength, and instead they get a song called Song of Inspiration. Anyone who listens to the song can make a wisdom check or wisdom-based skill check with a bonus equal to half of the Poetic Scald's level. So you can do things like sense motive and perception and heal with this massive bonus that you wouldn't otherwise get, which is pretty cool. There's also a couple of masterpieces that go with it. They're neat. I'm not sure if any of them are anything that I would be itching to drop a spell or a feat for, but in niche campaigns, I could see them being useful. There's a next section is called Royal Defenders, which has these really neat archetypes themed around protecting kings and queens. There is a High Guard fighter, a Throne Warden gunslinger, a Witch Watcher for the witch. So I guess it's which witch watches the witch. And
Okay, I think I followed that.
and then there's a new witch patron, which is cool. Those don't happen much. It's the protection patron. It's a patron that I'm really surprised we didn't have already. And then there are protective hexes that sort of work like a buffing version of Evil Eye. So it's surprisingly whoa, wow, man, this might be something I'd rather do instead of Slumber People. Yeah. The High Guardian basically promises to keep somebody alive and gets bonuses, both gives himself bonuses and gives the person he's promised to keep alive benefits. So, I swear my life to you, and then you go around and you try your best to make sure that you don't die and they don't die.
Wait.
It's pretty cool.
Finally another tank?
Yeah, it's a fighter. It's great. The Throne
The
Warden
Royal Tank.
The Throne Warden is like actually really nasty. Like every time I read it, I'm like, wow, that's really good. The one thing they get, they lose the armor class bonus, and they get an ability that as long as they have at least one grit, they can act in every surprise round at level 2. It's
Okay.
really good. And they also get a +1 bonus on initiative checks, and that bonus goes up at every interval that they would normally get the dodge bonus.
Wow.
So, yeah, it is cool. They also get an ability called Eye for Trouble, which is basically Daring Do, but for perception and sense motive checks. You roll
Cool.
you spend a grit, roll a d6, add it to your result. It can't explode the way that Daring Do does, meaning like if you roll a 6, you don't get to roll more. But I mean, a grit for better perception and sense motive could be helpful. The only thing I see with that is that it's really easy to paranoid yourself into spending more grit than you have to. I don't know if that's an upside or a downside for you.
I think that's a feature.
That is a feature. They get an ability called Warning Shot, which is basically the swashbucklers thing where like, or no, they get the thing where like normally you shoot somebody and if you miss, they lose their dex bonus to AC. This one replaces that with they shoot you and if they purposefully miss and you're so scared by the gun that you become staggered. Like, and as far as I can tell, there is no saving throw. You are just staggered. Boom! I can't take more than one action. Like, if that doesn't like make it really hard to beat up your protected target, I don't know what does. The other thing they get that's really cool is they can take their gun and they can shoot it into the air. As a standard action, and if they do, every ally they have gets to act in the surprise round. So basically, if the gunslinger acts in the surprise round, which they automatically do, they just shoot the air and give up their surprise round to let everybody else act.
It's a starter pistol.
Yeah, it's great. Witch Watcher diminishes spellcasting, which is sort of when you're talking about a full spellcaster, and I really don't think what they get instead really makes up for it. They get an ability to provide protection to another creature based on their patron's power. They can grant bonus temporary hit points. They can give a deflection bonus to AC or a resistance bonus on saving throws. They can disrupt spells that target the target, or they can give their target spell resistance. It's not terrible, and honestly, that's the only trait it makes. It just loses a spell casting. You keep all of your hexes and everything else. So if you want to be a witch that has fewer spells and relies more on their hexes, I guess you could. I don't know if I would take it personally, but it seems to me like a kind of thing that some people would really like.
Most witches I've seen are like 90% of their actions are hexes, and then sometimes they remember they have spells.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be honest, this next page didn't really catch me, so I'm going to kind of move it over quickly. It's based on having arcane retainers, which is basically a court alchemist. Damiel is pictured here, and he looks cool. There are a couple of spells that like have kind of neat little, noble themed abilities, but honestly, most of them are things I couldn't see used except in a very specific, almost borderline never happening situations. Enchantments. Yeah, go ahead.
Is one of them going to be guarantee me a son?
No.
Oh.
One of them is enchantment site, where you can see enchantments that are active around you, which is cool if you want to see if somebody's been compromised. There's one that forces a target's emotion auras from occult adventures to manifest physically around them, so anybody can see their emotions, which seems like something you wouldn't want to me, but I guess if you want to embarrass somebody, you can. And then the other two are like, there's things about speaking language and not being caught. It's cool, but it's not really my thing.
Speaking language could be useful.
It's if you see a creature speaking language, you can read its lips with perfect accuracy.
Handy.
Yeah.
Again, like, it's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's not amazing, but it could be situationally useful.
This is the ballroom intrigue spell list.
It is. They have limited discoveries. Like, there's an aromatic extract, which is very similar to that. Oh, gosh, there's like a potion where like you mix the potion into You mix like the vial into another potion, and then it turns into a cloud, and everyone who breathes in the cloud gets the spell. It's in one. It's in Serpent's. Not Serpent's Rise, Serpent's Ire, where like one of the pregens has it, and it basically does that with your alchemist extract. So it's okay. Again, situational. Um, it might be easier just to. Oh, and you need infusion already, so it's not like it can replace infusion, and it increases the level of your spell. Like it's basically a meta magic feat. Yeah, a volatile vaporizer. Thank you to Imperiosor from chat. Um, there's a remote bomb, which is like you set a bomb and you blow it up from far away. Very court intrigue. And there is a nostrum, which lets you basically delay poisons so that they don't take effect till later, which is really useful when you want to poison somebody, but I don't know if I'd want to spend a discovery on it. Then there's also a Royal Alchemist archetype, which is basically all about brewing antidotes so that when your king gets poisoned, the alchemist can take care of it. It feels like something that would have been better in Healer's Handbook, though. This is one of my favorite spreads. It's Orders of Chivalry. I like it because there's a Dex Paladin. It's basically a paladin that trades out a lot of the standard paladin kit for swashbucklery things. They lose the ability to get a deflection bonus to AC when they smite, but instead they get the weapon finesse ability of the swashbuckler at first level. They lose heavy armor and shields except for bucklers. They get the nimble ability instead of mercy, which honestly, in my opinion, is a downgrade. But starting at 4th level, you start picking up deeds, and you can actually pick up opportune parry and riposte with this starting at 4th level instead of spell casting. So you lose spells, but you get really good swashbuckler deeds, and you can do it while still having charisma to all saves and smites. You get more deeds as you level up. Like you just basically get a big chunk. At 4th level, you get dodging panache, menacing swordplay, opportune parry and riposte, precise strike, and swashbuckler's initiative. At 11th level, you get bleeding wound, evasive, subtle blade, superior feint, and swashbuckler's grace. And at 20th level, basically, whenever it's kind of like Holy Champion, which normally only works when you smite somebody, except the Swashbuckler's version works when anytime they crit with a light or piercing weapon. So it's really, really good. It is an excellent archetype. It's totally worth taking off that armor to be the Swashbucklery Paladin.
Does it get more skill points?
That is the only thing they don't get.
Darn.
That is the Swashbuckler's advantage. Mm-hmm. There is a Cavalier archetype that has a code of gallantry. It has a very specific list of orders they can pick from, and they have to be a specific alignment. But in exchange for that, they basically get an ability that works like a superpowered version of their banner, and a superpowered version of their of the paladin's protection ability, where they can basically just be like, standard action, everybody gets DR5 against evil for 1 minute, which is really good. Overall, it kind of fits the theme of if your alignment is super restricted, you're better than everybody else. So it's kind of like a weird mix between the standard cavalier and a paladin. There are also favors on this page, which is basically like little tokens that damsels or princes give you for special benefits. Most of them are cheap. They tend to have very small benefits. Some of them are kind of cute, dare I say, like the paper flower. Aww. Yeah, like paper flower is basically if you wear the paper flower, you get a 1st level sanctuary spell. It's cool.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. Courtly Races has a bunch of racial traits for the core races throughout the Inner Sea region. It talks a little bit about how courts from those races differ from region to region, and it provides an alternate racial trait that has to do with intrigue and general diplomacy type things for every race.
Diplomacy?
Yeah, just generally being awesome in a court. The one that's really fun, in my opinion, is Powerful Presence that humans get. It lets them treat their charisma as if it was 2 points higher for the purpose of qualifying for feats, and they get Persuasive as a bonus feat. So you lose the standard bonus feat for that, but if you're somebody who wants to take feats that need a minimum charisma score, it's not bad. You could be an 11 charisma human and take the Eldritch Bloodline feats, which is kind of cool. Courts of the East focuses on Gensha and all the different types of courtly things you can do out there. It focuses heavily. Oh no, Courts of the East starts with Jalmaray and then goes to Kathir. It has this awesome psychic discipline that James told me I absolutely had to mention. It's called pageantry, and basically, whenever you take an aid another action to help an ally, and the result of your aid another check beats a DC 20, you regain points in your Fenric pool, which is really strong. Yeah,
that is cool.
So the thing that makes it tricky is that it's hard to aid people with skills in relevant situations. It's not like aiding attack rolls or armor class. It has to be skills.
Okay. But still, that's something that can be branched into a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Like a swashbuckler aiding an attack, gaining panache back.
They also have an extremely power ability they can do with all of that Fenric power. Basically, whenever they cast a spell that has a standard action or less, they can choose to cast it as a full round action instead. And if they do, the DC and caster level goes up by 2 for 1 point. It's really strong. As long as you don't mind being slow at casting, you could like do all the crazy exotic movements and get crazy powerful benefits for it. There's also a feat which I featured in my fighter with a 23 skill ranks per level or whatever build. It's called Peerless Courtier. You need a charisma of 13 and a base attack bonus of +3, but you get to pick a social skill, which are listed as like everything you'd expect: diplomacy, intimidate, that sort of thing. And you get to use your base attack bonus instead of your number of ranks in that skill for determining your bonus. So it's really strong. You can pick it multiple times. If you want to be a fighter who uses his feats for all of those cool skills, you can. And it becomes a class skill for you in addition to that. It's very strong. At least I thought it was cool. There's also an Oracle archetype that basically picks wards and protects them, kind of like the witch stuff. That one kind of confused me. It felt like it wanted to go into the other section, and there wasn't room there, so it got bumped back here. But it's not a terrible archetype. You have to take this one specific revelation at first level, and you replace 3 bonus spells with different ones. It's okay. I can see it being really good for some campaigns. I don't think I would use it. I got excited before. The reason I talked about Dragon Empires is because there's a whole 2-page spread about their royal courts, which is an interesting read. Sadly, most of the feats are not great. They are kind of The one that I thought was really cool is called Seeker of the Eternal Emperor, which you treat your oracle level as being 1 lower for determining the benefits of all your curse. So your curse gets worse, like as in like you get fewer bonuses from it. But in exchange, you don't need any additional time to enhance divination spells within large or extend spell, which is cool. It's different. Like, you could just do it as a standard action without needing anything.
How does that fit into that book?
The fluff is that you use your oracle powers to help the nation of Poli make its political maneuvers as they try to become the leading successor state or whatever. For Tianjing, which is a Asmar-ruled nation, there is actually an Asmar feat. Whenever a creature re-rolls an ability check, saving throw, or skill check, you can give the target a +2 on the re-roll as an immediate action. And you can cast Divine Favor as a spell-like ability once per day. So that's a pretty solid feat in my book. It's Asmar only, but if you take a build that emphasizes re-rolling, like a channeling character with the Pharasmin ability to grant re-rolls to everybody you heal, it's pretty darn good. There's also a feat that's all about basically being the political tool of a dragon to accomplish ends in Zahoi, which is a successor state that's ruled by dragons. It's not an amazing feat. It's a bunch of small bonuses on saves in very specific situations, but having a feat that's based around dragons controlling you is cool. There's also a tea ceremony ritual, which I love. I don't really think it's something players are going to have much control of usually, but there's literally a tea ceremony ritual. It's great.
I feel like this isn't the first tea ceremony-based option either.
It is not. There are bard abilities based around it, but this is the first one that anybody can do.
Okay. All right.
There is a bunch of weird random courts in the I'm going to butcher this word. I'm going to put it up here so you guys can see how wrong I am. The Estalico courts? I don't know.
Ecclesiastic.
Oh, wait, no, it's backward.
Ecclesiastic.
That sounds good to me. There's a chivalry subdomain, which is kind of cool. It lets you touch creatures and it suppresses fear effects when they happen. Other than that, most of the other options are like for like the really specific rules subsystems, things like verbal duels and whatnot. So, like if you play in a campaign that has a lot of those, cool. It's not really something I was too into. Um, so the next spread is something that really confused me. It's cool, but I don't know why it needs to exist. It is a divine version of the Klingon monk called the Invested Regent. And like it has vested powers, just like the Klingon monk does. It's organized and written the same way. Technically, you can be both. You can be a Klingon monk and a vested regent. Um, the only difference is that if you go invested regent, you get a separate pool of points based on your charisma to use these powers with. So if you're Ryan and you want billions of resources, you could go Unchained Monk and take this archetype because it is apparently legal for the Unchained Monk, and all you lose is the first level bonus fee.
I do like the King Kong Monk, but that's always the thing that's confused me about how, like, it breaks the mold in a strange way.
Yes. There are also feats that go along with it to make it better. Specifically, it doesn't replace powers the way that Klingon Monk does. Instead, you trade feats for these abilities, so you're going to have less of them. But some of them are really cool. Like you can trade feats for things like, hey, I'm gaseous formed whenever I want at second level. I have tongues as self only, 2 points. I would love that. And that's like, you get it at 6th level, so it's like 9 levels earlier than a monk would have Tongue of Sun and Moon. I'm not sure if that one was thought out, but what are you going to do? There's a really awesome picture of the iconic vigilante murdering people.
Oh.
Always good.
I'm a fan of that. And there is a couple of really neat archetypes that go with it. The Butterfly Blade is a stalker that basically focuses on stealth, which is something you would think the core stalker would have.
You okay? Do you need a minute?
No, I'm okay. There is the Dragon Scale Loyalist, who is a vigilante who is basically working for the Regent King Noscalis Suvarta and his Dragon Scale throne. I actually have no idea where that is, but the fact that it's called Dragon Scale Loyalist sounds awesome. I wish there was more information. Oh, it's in Breviary. The abilities talk about the Sword Lords. Okay, I wish that was in the description. So that's neat. And then there's a couple spells that go with basically deceiving people. Then there's a spread that's awesome as a GM. I'm not sure why this isn't a player companion. It is a page of new tactics to use during verbal duels.
Oh, goodness.
So there's literally just 2 pages of verbal duel tactics. There's also 3 new uses for skills. You can use knowledge and ability to figure out somebody's lineage. You can use diplomacy to put on courtly airs. And you can use intimidate to leverage your influence over somebody else's influence. So, like, I outrank you, which those are available to anybody. But then there's, like, a whole page of new verbal duel options, which are cool. But new skill uses and new verbal duel options feel like they'd be better placed in a core rulebook where GMs are more likely to see them. And then, finally, the greatest piece of art in this whole book. I really hope I'm not overselling this, because this is Silksworn Malvaro. He is wearing solid gold everything. Even his skull is blinged. Look at his skull is wearing a necklace. It's probably the greatest piece of art I've ever seen. There's a couple of small minor magic items and courtly things to go with it. Like, we finally have stats for the long gloves that the Callistocrats wear.
Oh, what do
Yeah.
they do?
They give you a +4 circumstance bonus on saving throws against contact poisons on anything you touch.
That makes sense.
Yeah. There is a potion that has the grossest description. This alchemical perfume is distilled from a blend of humanoid pheromones and fey sweat. When applied as a full round action, it grants the wearer a +2 circumstance bonus on all charisma checks and charisma-based skill checks for 1 hour. During this time, the wearer also takes a -2 penalty on saves against charm and fascination effects that originate from fey. Long-term uses of this item eventually result in physical changes, causing the user to very vaguely resemble a fey creature, such as a nymph or dryad, although these changes are purely cosmetic. And then there's the Silksworn. The Silksworn is an occultist archetype that takes everything about the occultist and changes it. Instead of having implements, they have to wear a specific amount of money's worth of items, like jewelry, fine clothes, and where they can basically they have a limited number of garments and they have to be worth at least 10 gold. So you can wear wrist items for abjuration, conjuration for shoulder items, divination for eye items, enchantment for neck items, evocation for hand items, illusion for head items, necromancy for your chest, and transmutation for your feet. Um, you basically have to be wearing a specific amount of money. It doesn't matter what item you wear as long as you have at least 10 gold's worth of wealth on that body part. Um, they cast arcane spells instead of psychic spells, and they have bluff and knowledge nobility instead of knowledge engineering and planes. They also have cantrips instead of knacks, and they get to add their charisma modifier to the number of mental focus points they have. So it's level plus intelligence plus charisma, which means this occultist has tons of points. They also get fewer implement points though. Or no, at first level they get 4 implement schools instead of 2, and then they get another one at second level and every 4 levels thereafter. They also get more spells per day, but they don't have weapon and armor proficiencies, except for simple weapons and no armor. And you basically turn into a wizard, but a bling wizard.
Hey.
And yeah, it's really cool. They get bonuses on checks based on how much money they're wearing. They're really good at hiding their spell casting. And if they're wearing, and eventually by 16th level, if they're wearing an item that fits that slot that has for a school that they're casting, the save DC goes up by 2. It's a really fun, different way to play a occultist, and I totally love it. Yeah, it has a lot of fans. And then there's some magic items in the back, but I hate to say it, none of them were super cool to me. But the magic thrones are awesome. You can get a magic chair to rule find. Setiel apparently likes them. Yes. And in a nutshell, that's Heroes of the High Court. I have to say, reading it, there was a lot of really neat stuff in there. Things that, on one hand, felt like they could have been in those other books I mentioned, but at the same time, like it has a really nice feel of being all about wealth and luxury and sort of like that political ballroom scene. I enjoyed the book. I'd probably give it 4.5 stars, if only because there are a couple places where things seemed a little wonky, and I don't think I really liked the inclusion of verbal duel content in the book. But other than it's almost a perfect buy. There's nothing in it that I would say is a must use as a player, but there are things in it that I could see myself using, which I think is just as good, if not better.
So I'm glad you reviewed this because I'm playing Hell's Rebels, so this feels like it's within the realm of the books I should be considering. But from what you've described, it sounds more like options for the people we're rebelling against. So we got Heroes of the Street. That's the book that is focused on what my characters are doing. So I do think I'm going to give it a pass, not because I'm not interested in it, but because at this moment, it's not a book I need.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm getting 2 copies of that book now, and one to throw at a player I know who wants it.
Cool.
Well, I mean, if you're going to use verbal duels, it's great. Like, it takes a couple of skills that didn't have uses in verbal duels before and gives them things to do. And I think that's a good addition. I'm not sure why, like, it wasn't put into, like, Inner Sea Intrigue.
Well, these softcovers
wasn't
have
written
been
at the
plugging
time.
holes in the hardcover games
That's true.
for a very long time now.
It's true.
All right. Now, I just want to point out to everybody that, once again, I grossly underestimated how much time it takes to review Player's Companion books. Perram, do you think you can get through yours in approximately the 15 minutes that we allotted, or should we just say we won't be doing any banter and just do full reviews?
I think I can get it in the ballpark.
Do what you can. What are you reviewing?
Okay, I'm reviewing the Monster Hunter Handbook. And I was really excited to get my hands on this because I've been struggling on my G-Rank Tyrex, and I've been dropping my Inslate Glaive combos like crazy. And I also don't know how to build my Prowler.
What?
Oh, never mind. Different Monster Hunter. So Monster Hunter Handbook. There will be some link back to the game, but because it's obvious there's some link back to that game in here. But basically, it is a book about I hunt big and nasties, and really from the point of view that you are a hunter. You're out to stalk and track and take care of these very specific big beasties. It's got a lot of Witcher feel to it. It's got a lot of feel from, like I said, the Monster Hunter game series. A lot of classic stories about hunting, like the Universal monsters and things like that. This is the book about you. You're the rugged wilderness dude who knows exactly why the Sasquatch has been terrorizing the town and the one they need to listen to if they're going to solve this problem for good. With lots of options towards being very, very good at killing very specific things. This could have easily been called the Favorite Enemy Handbook. And it will tie into favorite enemies. In fact, one of the things that I'll go into is it finally has an option that anybody can get a favorite enemy using this book. So the very first.
I'm tired of hating everything equally.
Yes, you hate something very, very specific. If you want to absolutely destroy one specific creature type, this book enables that.
Faye.
But you'll have to give up a lot. It's like a lot of feat investments. Yes, Faye is like I didn't expect that, but there's a big section on just like killing Faye in this book.
Oh.
Okay, so the first
I chose Faye because they're the cutest.
I know. There's a whole scene where Lim is massacring tooth fairies.
Oh, well, tooth fairies had it coming.
Yeah.
Okay, so the very first thing this book, since we're talking about intros, the inside cover just talks about a few different monster hunting organizations in Pathfinder. It lists off the Dusk Wardens, Fort Longjaw, Knights of Ozum, Mendev Crusaders, the Order of the Pike, and the Pathfinder Society. And that's all I'm going to talk about that. It's an interesting thing, but it's not like your really cool healer kit inside cover. So the intro on this one has a very particular job because it says you're a monster hunter. But what does being a monster hunter mean in the world of Galarian? I mean, what is a monster in the world of Galarian? We think of monsters because they're these fantastical, mean creatures that don't exist in our world. But they exist in their world. It's not the Bear Hunter Handbook, or, I mean, that would be the equivalent of our world. It's like, the Safari Handbook. So it sets out that monsters are usually ferocious, powerful creatures that are aggressive in isolated environments and usually with low intelligence or no intelligence. So sort of an animalistic behavior motivated by, not motivated by an active intelligence or society. So that's how it defines monsters, which is an interesting enough hedge. But if you scrutinize it a bunch, I mean, I could say this about like Bengal tigers in our world if I was giving them the same, or Komodo dragons, because those guys are jerks. All right. It's actually okay. So it opens up with that. This book has a few repeated sections where it's like, here is something you would want to hunt, and here is how you would go about role-playing that hunt. This is how some strategies that you would need to think of to track this thing, the dangers of things that are like this that you should avoid in general senses. Like if you're a Fey hunter, you should probably know Cold Iron is in your back pocket, and you need to boost your will saves, and protection from evil is great because you can't be mind wonkied, and that's a big problem when you're hunting Fey. And that's how the book goes. It's basically got three major sections. The first section is, here's a creature type, let's talk about hunting it. And the creature types that it goes over, let me just pull it up here. It is, sorry. Okay, yeah. You got your aberrations, because tentacles are cool this year. Animals, because T-Rexes are monsters too. Fae, which I was actually really surprised to see Fae included here, because they have societies and they kind of go against the very definition they were talking about. But this is where
Yeah, I
You
can't
know.
think of any mindless fae.
but this is where you do get the cool picture of Lim massacring tooth fairies with song. You got the magical beasts, because those are the most obvious monsters of them all. You got your monstrous humanoids, because monsters in the name. You got they got close to my heart with oozes.
You
And
people in your oozes.
outsiders.
You'll love Bestiary 6 then.
Outsiders, and then for the rest of the creature types, they just are included in a catch-all other monsters category. So then it goes through all the rest of the. So the monsters I mentioned get 2-page spreads, and then other monsters are like half a page each. So, and a few of them make sense. Like, you don't need a bunch of pages on construct because it's not doesn't really fit in the theme. That's robot hunting, not monster hunting. And then you have like the dragon and the undead, who are getting a little bit of a shy showing here because they have other dedicated books that have covered this topic already.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, in the Monster Hunter sections, you usually get like a bunch of strategy. The left page is all about like the fluff. This is strategies that you should know. This is role-playing things you should know. Here's some general tactics that you should keep in mind if you are hunting this thing.
General tactics.
And then you get into like usually a set of feats that are helpful. For instance, in the magical beasts, you get my personal. Is it the magical beasts or animals? Let me double check that. And they're usually a linked set of feats, like a feat line. Oh yeah, here it is. It's in the animals. Animals. Yes. Yeah. So one of my personal favorites is called the bull catcher style feat, which is a grapple style where you. If something charges you, you can immediately grapple it. And it makes it harder for them to attack you. And then as you get higher in, you can then grapple it and then flip it and then reposition it basically anywhere you want. And then finally, you can flip it and throw it at something else. So it's like it charges me. I grab it and redirect the charge into another target. So that was a really cool, flavorful feat line.
Visually, that's amazing. Logistically, it sounds like a real pain in a GM's butt. Is it every time a creature? Is it a creature of a certain size that charges, or it's just everyone that charges can get grappled?
You have to ready it. It's a new readied action.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that all makes sense then.
And you would really this. It's not as bad as a thing because charges usually happen when charges are likely to happen, which is the first few rounds of combat. So to beat them in initiative and then know that a charge is likely, getting out in front and readying that action. So just like running to the front, teasing it, and go, yes, come on. Then this is both a niche thing and a thing you would get to do often enough to justify taking it. A lot of the stuff here is very niche by design because it's very specific creature types. This is one of the feats that it works for the animals because a whole lot of animals charge. It even says that this works with pounce and counters the pounce part, so they only get the one attack on you. So even when they do charge you, as long as you get that grapple, they only get one of their attacks. They don't get to full round attack you.
Cool. Good thing that they included that.
Yeah. So it does work really well against the animals because that's a lot of things they do, but it also isn't worthless to other types of creatures. I mean, being able to counter a charge from just about anything is useful. All right. So there's a lot of that. Disciples of the Pike are fun because this is sort of one of the callbacks to the Monster Hunter game. I don't know that that's intentional, but there's a whole lot of like abilities you do in the Monster Hunter game here, where like you do big charges and you stun the things that you're fighting, and it's a archetype for Cavalier where you give up your mount, but then you hyper focus on polearm. and get like bonus damages to polearm, and you get weapon training polearm and dex bonuses to AC, and you can charge over difficult terrain, and you can stun things you hit with your polearm. It's a great set of abilities that's really thematic to fighting. This is for the magical beast section. So like you're meant to go up against thing. You get bonuses the bigger something is compared to you, as long as you're using a polearm, and it's super thematic and it's fun. And this is like basically every single one of the creature types has something like this where it ties in perfectly. After after you get through that section, I'm skipping pages that I didn't mean to skip. You get into one of the creepier parts of this, but also fun, which is I should mention. Monstrous Humanoids also has a very cool one, which is based on your disguise skill. So you disguise yourself as monstrous humanoids, and the base level feat is called Monstrous Disguise. And you have to have knowledge, nature, and disguise ranks to pull it off. You need knowledge. Like the whole game, the whole book, you need to stack knowledge. You probably should have skill focus the knowledge of the thing, because a lot of these are like in combat you're making knowledge checks, and by however high you succeed, the more bonuses you get. So that's important. So with this one, you can disguise yourself as the monster, and then with the next one in line, Monstrous Masquerade, you can then disguise yourself so well you can pick one of its abilities from a list that it gives here, and then you gain that ability, which includes things like climb speeds, and like your disguise is so good that your claws can actually climb walls or swim or and all that stuff. And it's actually really brittle. Like it has rules in here for the costume falling apart the longer you're trying to use it. And it costs money to get those. You have to use like 500 gold pieces worth of, like, when you're cosplaying's not cheap. And if you're going to like pull a really good piece of effects out of a cosplay, man, that stuff wears out quick. And it's got you covered here. So 500 gold pieces every time you use it, but you get to pull some really cool abilities out of it. So it's fun RP and then fun in practicality.
Man, playing a character who cosplays as a monster sounds great.
Oh yeah, I know, right? Okay, so man, I'm skipping. Here it is. The next section is called trophies. So you're hunting these things, and what are you hunting them for? Well, one of the things that you would want to hunt are trophies. So this is, there's a feat called, here we go, Harvest Parts, where you actually harvest animal parts, and it lets you use them to substitute for the cost of creating magic items, so that as long as the magic item is thematically appropriate for the part and monster you're hunting. So you could like go hunt red dragon parts to get wands of fireball material or things like that, and like this based on their CR is how much those animals are worth towards that crafting. And then the real key part, the reason you did this really is not to save money on your magic item crafting. It's so that you can take Grisly Ornament, which is where you decorate yourself in these monster parts. And using Grisly Ornament, you can get like a special ability that's really good against that type of monster based on which monster part you're wearing. You can get bonuses to armor class, attack roll, CMD, saving throws, skill checks from the ornament against related to the monster you're going up against by just like harvesting parts of it and like equipping it. It's like grabbing some red dragon scales and strapping them to your armor to get bonuses to AC against red dragons, things like that.
So here's a question, Perram. Could I make an NPC doppelganger who wears human faces and get bonuses against humans?
Oh,
for like a monster. Not
Man
for me.
is the ultimate monster.
It says humanoid is the one. No, for this case, yes. A lot of these things, humanoid gets excluded for a lot of these abilities. This is one that it doesn't. That's creepy. But it doesn't. Okay. But for a lot of this book, keep in mind that things oftentimes, unless you picked monstrous humanoid, the monstrous humanoid section, monstrous humanoids and humanoids get excluded from a lot of the abilities because those are two broad types you often see. Those are also the ones that you have to super hyper focus when you're favorite enemying them, because you pick humanoids and that's half the characters you're going to encounter in a role playing game, and that's just too much. But
All of my goblins are gonna have human ear necklaces now.
and if you really, really liked this grisly ornamenting, they come up with an archetype for the occultist, where your implements are animal parts and things that you decorate yourself with, and ties in with this grisly trophy system. And then later on, you can also do Monstrous Crafter, where you can actually make one of those trophies into a magic item that's reusable. Usually these items are just like, oh, I get it for a day and then I'm done with it. It's like it falls apart because this is just something I carved out of a bear, like right now. Because you have to carve it from something you killed within a day, and then it lasts a day. So you have to go actively get it to use it. So it's a part of the active part of your play cycle. But you can get Monstrous Crafter to make it into a permanent magic item that you can activate once a day.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was going to say, because it sounds like then you're trying to dictate too much of the session and the campaign. If you're like, I also just want to skip off and kill a bear.
And then there is a whole 2-page section dedicated to a feat.
It better be one heck of a feat.
It is. It's the one I teased earlier. It's called Creature Focus. And this is how you get... and it's this feat, and then you take an add-on feat. So that's all. It's all based on this one feat, which is Creature Focus, which you can't have... the prerequisite is you cannot already have favorite enemy. If you have favorite enemy, you can use the add-on feats, but you can't use the core feat because you already have it. But basically, it gives you a favorite enemy at +2 against your choice as a feat. If you later gain favorite enemy, they then let you retrain this feat into one of these add-on feats. And the add-on feats are really, really great and almost required if you decide that you're a hunter of this type of animal. Because let me just give you a couple of examples of why they're great. Focused construct expertise. So you have to have favorite enemy or the feat that says I count as favorite enemy that you just got. Your weapon attacks ignore a number of hit points of damage reduction or hardness equal to half your favorite enemy construct bonus. But if you're hitting a construct, all of it.
Nice.
Fey expertise. You gain the bonus on attack rolls to confirm critical hits equal to your favorite enemy bonus, and you treat your weapon attack against Fey as cold iron.
Nice.
Animal expertise. You gain a bonus of stealth checks equal to half your favorite enemy animal bonus. Against animals, you get it all. You get your full bonus. So it's like designed specifically to counter those monsters' defenses or their strong points. And it's like very, very strong abilities that are useful in very, very specific situations. And that's basically this whole book is just nothing but that after that, again and again and again. See here, then the magic items. So first there's a whole section of just mundane items, which includes monster bait. Display stand, so you can keep a trophy a little longer. A hunter. Oh, also the display stand is how you can like scare off monsters because you put a part of them in your camp. It's like, here's this red dragon head. Dragons stay away, and they will because don't want to go there. It works with humanoids too. A Monster Hunter manual, which I'm going to avoid the same
That's
joke
awfully
twice.
meta.
But it basically gives you bonuses to checks against that particular specific monster. Monster Dummy, which you can use to get bonus targets when you teach your animal the attack trick.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yep. Taxidermy tools, which you need to do the harvest parts thing. And then you get into the magic items. And you get the penetrating whetstone, which is another Monster Hunter callback in my opinion, because that's one of the big items in that game, where you can sharpen your weapon to ignore damage you ignore natural armor, and then for every point you ignore natural armor that they don't have, you get bonus damage. So, but it's a nice little thing. And then Pocket Prey and Nest Revealer. Nest Revealer finds where the monster's nest is. Pocket Prey is just like a big super bait that you have in the locket. You go, boom, this monster's really going to come here really soon. And then Detecting Dart. You throw this at a monster, and then you can lock in on that signal of that dart again if it tries to get away from you. It even has
Nest
rules.
Detector. Nest Detector sounds like a tricorder to me. How do they describe this thing physically? What is it?
This small vial sealed with a fine metal cap engraved in the vestiges of noble hound. When the few drops of the creature blood are placed in the vial, it begins to fill on its own, replicating the creature's blood over the span of a minute. After 1 minute, the vial shatters, and a small fist-sized orb of crystallized blood falls to the ground. This animate orb then rolls in the direction of the last location in which the source creature slept.
That's the thing from Caravan of Courage.
Well, I guess it is.
Wow, that's not what I was picturing. That's funny.
Yep. It's got some really cool magic items for that. And then it ends with a group of hunting spells. A lot of spells that help make you taste bad, so the monsters don't want to swallow you is one of them, called Repugnant Taste. There's Guardian Knowledge, which helps you get bonus knowledge checks against monsters. Huntsman's Spear, which lets you make a spear that's really good against your weapon, really good against that monster, and then get a really cool attack at the end. There's like a one-use super attack with it. I need these else as well. Then there's Solidarity Earth and Slick Walls, which are both spells to make it harder for the monsters to run away. So, like, again, these aren't as strong as the other options in the book, but they're very specific. Overall, really like this book, but you have to be wanting to play this type of character. You have to be willing to go for a very specific build. And I know that, Ryan, you're not a fan of hyper conditional character options.
That's true, but it sounded like each of those had a non-conditional rider, which is I appreciated that.
Yeah, but if you want to play a monster, and because these are just like a couple of feats to get the abilities, you could stack up more than one, and you can even take the favorite enemy feat again and again to just picking new enemies. It stays locked at +2, but it does allow you to take the bonus feats that are more important. I think it's more important ignoring damage reduction on the thing I'm trying to kill than just getting another +2 or 3 damage when I hit it. All right, so overall, I really like this book. I'd definitely say if this is a concept that it all appeals to you, it feels that it's a buy because it really fills those niches very well.
So what I like is that we've gone through 3 of the last 4 or 5 player companions that came out, and we're satisfied with all of them.
Yeah.
They really seem to be hitting their theme. They seem to be coming up with new creative options, and nothing seems broken from what the 3 of us were talking about.
I looked for broken concepts, and I really didn't see anything out of line. I mean, all the options were very strong, but it was very strong against one thing, and that's fine.
I'm happy to hear that, because player companion line's probably the line I've had the most. I've been dedicated to the most, but I've been in and out of it the last couple of years, so it's nice to hear that we've had a good solid streak of them again.
All right. We only have about... we're at usually when we shut the show down time, so I think we have time for Andrew, and that's it.
All right, that's fair.
Unless you want to move me into just banter, and since we've kind of covered it before.
Okay, well, what would you prefer? You would prefer to banter than to talk about the audiobooks?
We can do that.
Okay.
Okay.
Bantering transition.
Then we'll be right back to banter right after this.
Blah, blah, blah.
Pathfinder news.
And we're back.
In the banter section, we just talk. We talk about stuff. It's usually Pathfinder related. And we haven't done it in a long time, which means that we've all got interesting things going on in our campaigns that we really want to talk about. Andrew, you're playing in Kingmaker. How's that going?
It's going pretty well. Our GM is very minutia oriented, so we've got weather conditions that he's got planned, I think, almost for a year in advance. And we got snowed out in the middle of June.
What?
A freak snowstorm. He actually uses an algorithm or something from. He went and figured out where climate-wise Kingmaker should happen on Earth, and he figured it's roughly Poland.
Huh.
And
I thought it was further south than that.
And
or maybe I don't know how far south Poland is.
I'm going to trust him. I mean, even if it's just in his version of Galarian, we're roughly in about the area of Poland, and it is freak weather, but possible. And the algorithm he uses takes into account previous days, so you're not just getting random, bits. It takes into account the previous days and layers the whole thing out. He's got some website that he went to for it. It's kind of amazing, and it's kind of a pain. We managed to miss our knowledge checks and had no idea that here we were out in the failed our survival checks. Had no idea what we were about to get nailed with. We're like 2 hexes away from we're in the very beginning. We're in book 1, so we're only like 2 hexes away from your first village that you start in, the trading post, and we all nearly died of exposure.
At least you were close enough to the trading post you can rush back and get some blankets.
There was no rushing back. It was like 12 inches overnight, and then it was followed by several days of rain. So we're plodding back, and we had left one of the player characters couldn't make it to the game, and so she was waiting back at the trading post like, oh, better you than me.
That's an interesting way of handling the weather. I've heard the argument that weather shouldn't be static, which is fine, but weather also, the dynamics of actual real world weather are really complicated and hard to recreate. So yeah, just finding a place on Earth that should have similar weather and just saying like, this was their weather that year, I'm just copying that. That's brilliant. That's brilliantly simple.
Yeah. And he's got the calendar of weather figured out. He's got that behind his screen. He's got a bunch of other things figured out, and the random encounters have been brutal. We were camping one evening, and one of the players got gored almost to death in her sleep.
Jeez.
by one of the boars in the area, because one of the little baby boar comes up squeaking, and the guard on duty is like, oh, let me pick you up, mama.
That seems ill-advised.
It was kind of hilarious. And then last week we discovered, because somehow we managed to miss this obvious rule, that negative dex does not mean dead.
Yep.
No, it means paralyzed.
Means paralyzed.
Yes.
I went from 17 as my original dex to a -1.
Wow.
Yeah.
This was a random encounter?
This was actually I don't remember if it was a random encounter or a regular encounter, but we ended up running into something with poison, and I just could not make my fortitude saves when they were necessary. And I took like 4 or 5 rounds of poison to my dex.
That happened to one of my group in their and not in Kingmaker, but PFS group a couple of weeks ago when I killed one of them. But a bunch of them got into negative decks, like half the party, so they had to dread pirate Wesley the last scene, where everybody's just propping him up. He's like, we should probably go that way.
Andrew, you should tell your GM to grab Pathfinder Unchained and use Unchained poisons, because Dex poison can kill you in Pathfinder Unchained.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because I want to be dead.
Oh.
Listen, I never said it was about what you want. It's about realism.
So what made your group decide to go with Kingmaker?
Well, we had been playing Hell's Rebels, and I had been the one running it. We talked about switching off GMs because I thought we were going to be switching games back to, we were playing Mummy's Mask, and then we weren't playing Mummy's Mask. I was running Hell's Rebels. I thought we were going to switch back to Mummy's Mask, and I was like, I've got things I've got to do. I can't prep another book yet. I figured I had a couple months before I'd have to prep another book. And somewhere in there, we ended up deciding to do Kingmaker. Our GM had run it before a couple of times, so he's got a lot of experience in how to do in doing Kingmaker. So that's where we are. I'm not certain we're even going to go back to Hell's Rebels anytime soon. We've got new players in the group that we didn't have before, and so I don't know what we're going to do as far as our Hell's Rebels game. But for the moment, we're Kingmaker.
I'm impressed that you found a GM who's run it a couple of times and is willing to run it again. Has he completed this adventure path?
As far as I know, yeah.
Wow. I missed my Kingmaker game.
You'll get past the first book, and he'll say, "Oh wow, nobody's survived my weather algorithms yet."
He's got stuff planned for like post book 6.
Oh gosh.
Cool.
So I think he does. That was the implication I got from it. That there were things that he was going to do that come afterwards. And there were some character things that he said, you can do this, but you can't do these things because they don't fit in with what I'm going to borrow to use post book 6.
Can you give an example of the kind of things you can't do?
I can't be a halfling.
Oh. Did you want to be a halfling?
Well, it was one of the things that I was talking about doing when we thought that I was going to be dead from Dex poison. Really didn't think I was going to survive that encounter for a while there.
You slept it off.
Well, I'm still sleeping it off. That was the last encounter of the night.
Nice.
So how many sessions have you had now?
2 months. Once a week.
2 months. Wow, he is minutia based.
Yeah. Well, we've got a very large group, so he's like slowed down XP a lot, and we're doing a lot of very detailed hex exploration. It is very, very oriented on the hex exploration stuff. We've only done maybe 10 hexes tops, although we ended up way down in we went way down on the map and we're in serious trouble with bandits.
I thought the bandits were just everywhere.
Yeah,
that's why
we actually went back to one of their camps.
Oh, you got to the bandit camp already?
Yeah, we went down to the bandit camp right away. We slaughtered almost everybody there except for the bandit leader who escaped and is now presumably getting more bandits together to come kick our butts.
As you do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it's a sandbox, so it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. But in my Kingmaker campaign, we very often got into territory we should not have. And Ari, our GM, did the best she could to hint at it. But like, eventually, at one point, she just said there was a really big rock in front of the way, and was just like, she'd come up with the creative solutions for us going into high-level territory. She was just tired of it. She was just like, no, there's a big rock. It won't move. No, it doesn't matter how much you study it. This rock is not moving. Maybe someday a strong breeze will move it, but you're not moving it today.
It's a +9 PC Bane rock.
Man,
somebody dropped this
rock.
mystical wall right here.
It's like that magical barrier that blocked entry into Kel'Thalas and Vanilla WoW, Perram.
Oh, man,
somebody got that.
That was an epically powerful log.
Yes, it was the greatest log that ever existed. It sounds like you're having fun so far, Andrew.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's pretty. We're having a good time with it. One of the things I was going to mention when we were talking audiobooks, though, is I stole a couple of ideas for my character from the audios.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
In a couple of the books. Well, I was gonna say in a couple of the audiobooks they mentioned the Sun Orchid Elixir
Oh yes.
several times. So I'm playing a character who is a human magus who has already bought and consumed a Sun Orchid Elixir. I'm like 115 years old.
Cool.
Wow.
I squandered my entire noble fortune to get it, and now I'm trying to make a better life for myself than rather the spoiled brat life that I lived before.
Man, you must have had a really bad life if you like didn't make it past level 1, having lived an entire adult human life.
Well, we kind of padded it out. I took a couple of traits. I took the extra traits feat, so I've got like 4 traits, and I kind of had them padded out so that they represent my extended time, and then the GM let me take the demi-human feat that gives you trained in like all knowledges and professions effectively.
Hey, I gave that feat to James. I know that feat. That's breadth of knowledge or breadth of experience.
Breadth of experience.
In my games, we've actually adopted a sort of not house rule, but house canon for this phenomenon when you have a really old first level character or a player is replaying a character from a previous campaign in a new campaign, but we restart their levels. To be fair, it's use it or lose it. Man, you're way out of practice. When was the last time you fought a monster? You got to earn those XPs again.
That's scary, but also funny.
Yeah,
And also a simple solution: use it or lose it. I like it.
yeah.
Well, it also
Kind of
helps
fun.
explain why, technically in the course of about 8 to 14 months, depending on which AP, you can have a 16, 18-year-old become the most powerful fighter on the planet.
Oh, because he is using it.
Exactly.
I thought that's because all Pathfinder campaigns were actually anime.
They are, of course.
Oh, man.
All right, so Andrew, you had a near death.
Yeah.
Who had the next least lethal campaign experience recently?
Well, he had murders, Perram. You should talk to Perram.
Laying waste.
Perram has murdered everybody.
I have. It's been.
All right.
Well,
Tell him about the trail of bodies, Perram.
But it's not your fault because you're in Artrosa.
Well, Atrosh is only one of my deaths, but it's a horrible death. So lately, I don't try to kill my players. I try to be fair about things. I try to embody the role that the GM's role is to challenge the party, not be their adversary. Lately, they don't believe me. Because in our weekly PFS sessions, I'm just sort of killing people left and right now. We killed 2 people a couple of weeks ago. A couple of those got to come back, but not everybody. I've destroyed animal companions left and right and familiars. They're just they don't even count anymore. They're
Even
just
familiars.
confetti on the ground at this point. And then last session, I completely destroyed. Last session, one of our rangers just got completely obliterated by a full round attack from a Minotaur, so that's gone. They're toast. And then, but the most horrible of deaths happened this last Thursday in Atrosia, because we're in book 3 of Reign of Winters. Minor spoilers for that book. Atrosia is a dungeon that Baba Yaga built, and is filled with all the nastiness, both magically and creature, that you would expect one of the most powerful evil witches in all the multiverse to have. And so it seems to be this pattern of, here's a room that's an inscrutable puzzle that technically we should have thought about how to solve, but we're not before the horrible bad hits us and we die or take horrible consequences. Or, oh, here's a room full of a really powerful monster, and then here's a room full of a bunch of annoying monsters that drain our stats. And they just repeat that rotation through the entire dungeon without a breather.
Yup. And it's a sandbox dungeon, so like you can theoretically run into like 3 or 4 debuffing rooms and then walk into a bruiser and have nothing and just be done. It is the most grueling game experience I have ever had in Pathfinder. I know, granted, I've never done any bone keeps. I've never done any of the crazy D&D adventures, but from my experience, it is the probably the single most difficult dungeon I've ever done. Like we had two character deaths in that dungeon. Neither of them permanent. Actually, no, three because one of the NPCs that the books give you died in that dungeon. So many people were lost. Like it's so sad.
And
It is the most grueling. Continue, please. I'm sorry.
the encounter that took our character's life, a occultist named Alyosha, who his player was quite grieved to see them die, was the Shadow Room, which is it's a room in dark. You go into darkness in the room, and it's just filled with shadows, and I mean filled with them. There are 7 of those jerks in there and a greater shadow. And they are using like plus 50 some stealth checks and their specific tactic is to wait and ambush the back party person and just munch their way Pac-Man style to the front. So what happens is the fight starts, the players realize they're woefully unprepared for fighting these things that they do half damage on if they happen to have magic items on them, or no damage at all for the animals, the many animal companions in the party that are completely worthless now. And
Yeah, and Reign of Winter is not good at giving treasure. Like nobody has magic items.
Yeah. They got one good shopping trip, and then one of the persons bought Amulet of Mighty Fist because they're a natural attacks character, but didn't get the +1. They just got the elemental, and they really regretted it in that room. And so they're just like, one player gets hit and they take 7 points of strength damage. The next person gets hit and they take 6 points of strength damage. And then one person's just surrounded by 3 of them all by himself. And poor Alyosha is like, oh, you take 7. And then you take 3. And then he stops and says, I have 2 strength left. And I quoted this on, and then one of my other players immediately popped up and said, so you're going to make us play that Starfinder campaign whether we like it or not, huh?
That's funny.
This is the first time I've ever seen fear in their face. They used like withdraw actions and full retreats and just got the heck out of that room. But Alyosha did not. They got his corpse out and then regretted that because the number of rounds before the shadow came wasn't quite up yet.
So when we did that room, we got really lucky. Our shaman just likes preparing weird spells because he just drops them for whatever he wants anyway.
Right.
And he prepared anti-incorporeal shell that day.
Oh, jerk!
So anti-incorporeal shell is basically antipathy, but only for incorporeal creatures. Incorporeal creatures can't pass through the 10-foot barrier. So we all huddled together in fear. And like our shaman also has the life spirit. So he just like, it's cool, guys. I got this. I'm going to hit everybody with anti-incorporeal shell. Channel positive energy, channel positive energy, channel positive energy. And we just sat there huddled in fear while he killed all the nasty shadows. There are lots of rooms that almost killed us or did kill us. That one, we got really lucky.
And this is a nasty room, and I know there are worse in this dungeon. So much worse in this dungeon.
James died against the final boss,
Oh.
and he got sacrificed to the demon lord who's being worshipped there.
Oh, of course. Why not?
They took his corpse and they threw him down the Eon pit.
This is Tomb of Horrors level nonsense. Just
Oh,
walking down the wrong hallway, slay livings. I mean,
Yeah, it's nasty. There's a point where like there's a bunch of traps on the ground that you can see, but they're impossible to get rid of unless you have like a specific character class. And so my bard just sat next to the one and huddled in the fetal position and said, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to go through these. I eventually had to get up and run through when my party aggroed a monster in that room. I got really lucky with saves.
it's the nastiest dungeon I've run in a very long time.
Yeah. We're in book 4 on our Reign of Winter campaign. That's the one that takes place on Triaxis.
Ooh.
It's actually really fun. I like it. We are currently trying to Triaxis is completely run by dragons for the most part, and we're trying to invade the icicle prison of a ancient white dragon, which is really cool. So we went through on the ground floor and we murdered like all of his diplomatic guests. We murdered his consort, who's like a Triaxan woman. And the problem is we murdered them all, and we were like, okay, well, the dragon's probably up ahead. Let's rest the night and come back. And so we hid out in the kitchen, and because nobody comes to look in the medium-sized kitchen, and so like we're trying to sleep through the night, and all of a sudden we hear him roar in anger because he's realized we killed everybody. So now we're probably gonna have trouble on our next when we go to attack him because he knows that we just killed everybody. Nobody survived. That was great. I'm also running Strange Aeons right now, in addition to playing in Reign of Winter.
So how did that come together? You just started a second group?
So I wanted to offer Strange Aeons to my Constrat players as a way to reward people who were GMing for me regularly, because I figured eventually they'll sanction it and I can give them PFS credit for it. Um, so I wanted to reward them for GMing games for me and being around. And then there were a couple people who I really liked, but never really came out very much. So I was hoping that by getting them to come once a month, they might decide to come another time a month. You know what I mean? So and then I also offered a spot to the person who is on shift at the store when we play because they're really accommodating, and I wanted to make sure that person got to play. So it's kind of like a ragtag group of people. The only person who's the same in both is James plays with me in Strange Aeons and or with me in Reign of Winter and as my player in Strange Aeons. Strange Aeons is really fun. It's both creepy, but also it doesn't feel unfamiliar. Like it still feels like Pathfinder while still being Lovecraftian horror. Right now they're in a part where uh, they have to assault a fortress that's been filled with juju zombies. And
Do they really have to? Could they walk around?
it kind of it assume they don't have to, but if they don't, that like the other place they have the option to going to is where the final encounters are, and they'll just get steamrollered. So I was very strongly suggesting like, hey, you guys should check this place out because there could be evidence here. It's the government building. Maybe you'll find papers about who you are and where your memories are. If I have a critique of Strange Aeons, it's that book 2 doesn't give you a good reason for the party not just to disband once you get out of the asylum. Like it kind of banks on your players' willingness to like be curious about like their memories and who they are, but it doesn't necessarily give them great pointers in that direction. Once you get past book 2, the thing you have to do is pretty clear enough that I think that they're not going to have much issue sticking together and finishing out the rest of it. But man, oh man, book 2 has required a lot of cat herding on my part.
I kind of don't like it when I don't like it when our players are looking for excuses to not be together instead of looking for excuses to be together, because I get it. There's this whole reason that you want to get in the character, but haven't we done that so many times?
I agree with you. It's why in our Reign of Winter game, I'm playing a neutral good bard and James is a neutral evil swashbuckler rogue. And I was like, you know what? Long term, like I'm geass to do this thing for Baba Yaga. I'm gonna have a better chance to do it with the party. Yeah. And also, like, holy shit, you might be evil, but if I'm ever in trouble, I can. Oh, I'm sorry. Holy shoot, you might be evil, but I can count on you to take down all of the bad guys we meet.
Mm-hmm. Well, plus, little differences like good and evil matter less when literally the world might end.
Well, and the thing is like, that's, like, Strange Aeons builds up in scope, but the scope isn't big when you're leaving book 1 going into book 2. Like, you don't realize what's really at stake at that point. It's like by the time you get to the end, like I've read all through all the books, by the time you get to the end at book 6, like the stakes are enormous. Like it's really like, oh man, if you don't, like the fundamental nature of reality will shift. Like it's very Lovecraftian. Mm-hmm. It's really fun. It's a great read. I did an article on my blog about how I've been tweaking it to try to pull their backstories in more, because it's very much a campaign that focuses on the character and their journey as a person who has no memory. So I think that it's an AP that really benefits from a GM who's willing to change things around and make really cool scenes. So I've been a very scenic GM for it. and you could read all about it on Monday's blog.
And we'll talk about that when we do the wrap-ups, but I really did enjoy that blog. And I, usually enjoy your blogs, but there was something about that one that I particularly enjoyed.
How about you, Brian? Are you doing adventure paths?
Oh, we're barely surviving our rebellion.
Oh.
So we are towards the end of book 2 of Hell's Rebels, and I would say up until now, encounters have been okay. Like, I can't think of another encounter before the last couple of sessions where we really felt on the ropes or challenged. Most of the Hell's Rebels challenges have been in, like, getting the right allies on our side, and it's been really good. It's really atmospheric. We do a lot of negotiation, but the negotiation really feels like stressful and with stakes, and it's been excellent for that. But we've gotten into a bit of a dungeon crawl that almost feels optional, and yet we're kind of following it all the way through. And in this dungeon, Matt's character was knocked out in 3 consecutive encounters, which I think are the only times he was knocked out in the entire campaign, before finally dying in the next encounter, along with most of the party. So we lost. Dying? Yeah. Matt's what was he playing? An investigator. Matt's investigator flat out died. Jay's mesmerist, dead, and Mealy's blood rager, dead. 3 of them died in the same encounter. I was knocked unconscious pretty early in that encounter. It was a minor spoiler, but that was the underwater encounter I was talking about, where our maneuverability was severely impacted by the environment, and then the area of effect spells came out. And so we were lined up and got blasted by a specific area of effect spell, and then by the time it was that same monster's next turn, we'd barely moved because of how limited we were in our ability to move. Because I went into this hoping to negotiate. So actually, what should have been an encounter with 2 guards became an encounter with every able-bodied warrior and the boss of this section of the dungeon.
Oh, gosh.
Where I was like, can we talk to your leader? Sure. They all come in, and he's like, well, I'm killing you now. What are you doing in my lair? And on top of that, I had suggested that only Millie's blood rager, Fidget, come down and be like my bodyguard, and everyone else stay in the next room so as not to intimidate the people that I want to go negotiate with. So the first round is just me and Millie getting hammered while the rest of them get into the room. And then the first couple of rounds, we were killing all those guards, a guard or 2 around. And so we were still feeling like this is going pretty well. But the main boss was just buffing himself. So by the time we'd taken care of all the guards, we just had this super buffed up monster that was out of our reach, that had maneuverability on us, had area of effect spells. And so we didn't realize how doomed we were until we just started to drop.
Did you manage to kill him?
No.
Oh. So he took you hostage and the other person, and everyone else is dead.
No, Corey survived and escaped with my unconscious body, and everyone else is dead.
So this sounds more like a June rebellion, and Jean Valjean got you out of there, and the soundtrack's going to sell platinum, but we're done, right?
No, we actually had a really good follow-up session to that. Jeff really lingered on the idea of, like, we have to react to what just happened. And he played it well. He incorporated the replacement characters, because all 3 players are still in the campaign. He incorporated their replacement characters into a nice scene at the beginning of the next session where an NPC we'd been dealing with was kind of building up, like, you guys are going to join this rebellion. It's going to be great. There's going to be 8 of you. It's going to be a really strong core to this rebellion. And so then Corey drags my unconscious body in there, drops me on a table. I get healed by somebody that apparently is a healer. Did not realize it before this time. So that's a fun discovery. And then, so these people come in expecting to meet, like, the Alpha Squad. And instead they find me, like, drenched, covered in blood and water, barely awake, being like, oh, you want to join us? Okay, sure. Your trial will be killing the thing that just killed the majority of our rebellion a minute ago.
Oh, my goodness. Well,
yeah.
Rebellion stories are always tragedy, so you're par for the course.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Now you have to go and you have to write yourself a musical number and perform the musical number alone to like the ceiling while standing on a table. I'm assuming
What?
you're a gnome.
No, I'm not a gnome this time. I am a human oracle of bones.
All right, it's gonna have to be a sturdy table then.
Actually, I'm a dual cursed oracle. So one of my curses is that I'm lame, and the other one is that I'm haunted. And up until now, I've been haunted by my brother, who is also the bones that I carry around and sometimes throw as a extra combatant. Sometimes I wear him like armor. Sometimes I manage to do both at once. I think I'm going to slowly start incorporating the 3 characters that died as also haunting me.
Now, this is the campaign where you had limited book selection, right?
It is, yes.
So, what
Jeff
have you added
let
any
us.
books?
I think I'm at my max. So the next time I want to take a new option, which actually I guess would be Healer's Handbook, the next time I want to take an option, I have to get Jeff's permission to do it. And Jeff's been very good about that. And actually, one of the things, Jay is playing a summoner as his new character. He's not playing an unchained summoner. He's playing a base summoner, which is the only class that was unchained. It was chained. They took the class that was unbalanced in the wrong direction and toned it down and made it more balanced. And Jeff's just letting Jay play a vanilla original flavor summoner. I'm not sure what that conversation went like because the guys actually most of the character building was in secret between the characters that were dead and our GM, so that was cool. Or the players, not the characters that were dead, but the players of characters that were dead. The characters that were dead haven't said anything since, and their bodies have disappeared, and they had the wand of breathe water. So there was some logistics before we could go back in and get our revenge. But yes, this is the limited options campaign. So far, that's doing okay.
Nice. Very cool. I'm expecting the next time that I'm on, I'll be beyond level 13 in Reign of Winter. And currently, where they're at, they're about halfway done the current mini dungeon in Book 2. They'll probably be at least level 5. Might clear the whole AP next time, but I don't want to get too ahead of myself, you know? It's cool. So, like, one of the things I did is a lot of my players have, like, these really rich backstories, and I'm like, this is great. How am I going to fit this into Strange Aeons, which is already, like, pre-written, without just writing, like, shoehorning in a bunch of characters? So one of the nice things is that all of them have amnesia. So I told them to be super general and not give me specific names. So they made up like pseudonyms for people. And I ended up just taking NPCs who were like important throughout the book and assigning them to the different people that the players knew without telling them. So where they're currently at, and also like I told them to give me very basics for their backstories, and then I would fill them in. So I remember I handed over one of my players her backstory. She was like, I watched my mother get assassinated. I was like, yup. I was like, you're probably emotionally damaged. And she's like, and like all of them have backstories like that where just terrible things have happened to them all. For James's character, he's obsessed with this woman that he only knows as the mistress, and she's actually the boss of this AP book, and he's like completely in love with her, completely obsessed with her, and they do this thing where the cultists have really good maneuverability around the city, and at one point they confront you. So in addition to having all these wimpy cultists that my group of 6 players were going to completely beat up, I took a pretty decent approximation of James's character sheet, and I slapped on the alter ego template, and I had him fight himself. And I told him that like while he was fighting, his alter ego was just bailing and crying the whole time. And so he finally kills it. And it turns out that the alter ego is the representation of every regretful, sorrowful memory that character ever has made and has forgotten because of the storyline, and that because he's a blood rager who has the dead calm ability. It's the Jason barbarian from Horror Adventures, where you just go into like this really emotionalist state and you just go after people, and so. Like when he did, like I gave him this big backstory of like all of these really regretful memories that his character remembers, and now he's like, my character never wants to fight these things again because like I flat out was like, there's 5 more of them, one for each major phantom emotion that you're missing, and so every time you kill one, you'll get emotions back, and he's like, no, it was great. But then, it was fun. I added a construct version of the boss. It's like this weird monster who is a physical replica of her, but only her skin. She's hollow on the inside. They're called hollow ones, and they're like CR10 creatures. They're a fourth level party. So she just sits in the back and watches, and she has this necklace that's tied to the bard. The bard was her slave, and she can use the necklace to force the bard to sing for her cultists. So the bard is sitting there wasting his round singing and buffing the enemies, and he can't stop it. So another player is the brawler who sunders stuff, and so he runs over to the necklace and he's like, I'm gonna try to sunder. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, you can try, but like to myself, I'm like, this she's a CR10 construct with a 38 CMD. You're level 4, good luck. Rolls a nat 20, rolls max damage. Gem breaks immediately. And I'm like, that's so cool, but also that's so sad for me. But it's one of those moments that as a GM you're just like, bravo, you took a risk and it paid off for you. Good for you. You had a 5% chance to make your dreams happen and you did it.
Okay. All right, gang, we are way over time now, so I think we need to wrap things up.
We'll be right back to wrap things up right after this.
Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups and shoutouts. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shoutouts.
And we're back.
Thank you for joining us for episode 155 of No Direction, the Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, we want to bring your attention to some cool things that we've been, that have had our eye or we think would be of interest to our listeners. First of all, I'm going to remind people that we teamed up with Sirenscape to make the Gnomeland Security sound set. It is a fun sound set about a chimera attacking a gnome village and the gnomes retaliating with chainsaws and alchemist bombs and whatnot. And it's absolutely insane. And it can be yours free. So if you get Sirenscape and the program is free download and use voucher code GNOMES, all caps, then you can get this sound set as one of your free sound sets. And Sirenscape by default also comes with a whole bunch of other generic scenes. Like there's a bar fight and there is I believe it's bugbear battle. Mm-hmm. So if you are at all curious about Sirenscape, I recommend you use our voucher code GNOMES at checkout and just see if the program works for you. Mm-hmm. Oh, remind me, Perram, at some point I want to talk about my experiment using the player options for Sirenscape because they released the class packs.
Right. I've never seen anybody use those yet. Yeah, but
I have.
Yeah, and I love, like, we here at the network love Sirenscape. It's amazing. Please go get it, use it. It's great. The subscription is cheap and worth it. That's probably the best way to do it because then you get all the sound sets. Yeah, it's awesome.
Speaking of awesome, Liz Courts, this is something that we mentioned. She had an Indiegogo campaign up to help support. It is the Section 15 generator. If you have done any third-party work, you know that you have to include the Section 15 in the license at the end of the book. And Section 15 is a reference to all the books that you have used for this product. And it is a pain to slog through all the different options and make sure you got everything right. Mm-hmm. So she has made a handy online tool that is free to use, but is you can support the fact that she's done something cool for the community by going to her Indiegogo page. The project's name is Section 15, an OGL generator for 3PP websites, or you go to darksunstudio.com, and that's where you'll find both the Section 15 generator and a link to her Indiegogo page.
And the reason that the Section 15 is so complicated, so their listeners can have an idea, if you were to use a book, open content, you don't only have to cite that book, but every book it cites, and then every book those books cite, to eternity, back to the player's handbook.
Yep. And if another book messes up, like you're quoting somebody who didn't cite things correctly, then guess what? It's on you, not them. Another good one example that always happens is you'll see Paizo books don't have to reference other Paizo books as part of their compatibility agreement. And so like people will be like, oh, well, I'm just going to go and cite this book from, I don't know, this advanced race guide. And I only have, it cites, oh, look, just the 3 bestiaries and then a couple of other monsters. It's like, no, like Paizo doesn't have to cite those things. You do. Like the advanced race guide is like the worst book in terms of citations because it cites 3 bestiaries. And like literally it's an easy 2 pages of citations. And Liz's product compiles them for you. It alphabetizes them for you. About the only thing it won't do is put them in InDesign formatting for you. Like, other than that, it pretty much does everything. If you are a third-party publisher in any capacity, you should throw dollars at her. I know I did.
It's the dollars you throw at her are infinitely worth the time you save.
Yes. Yes.
And finally, before we go to the network shoutouts, is there anything anyone else would like to bring attention to?
No.
No.
That's fine.
Oh,
So, Perram.
yes. Funimation is going to be re-releasing Record of Lodoss War. It's one of the big animes that was based off Dungeons and Dragons. So keep an eye on that and watch it. If you haven't seen it, it'll be on all the streaming services. So if you want a big piece of gaming history, go check that out.
I have only watched some of that, which is more than most anime, but still not a whole lot. So I will keep an eye out for that. Thank you, Perram. So let's talk about the network. Since the last time that we spoke, we have had 2 full weeks worth of network content on our blog. Perram, where can people find out more about the blog?
Oh, you can go to nodirectionpodcast.com, where all of our daily Pathfinder blog releases are located, by using some of the best writers in the industry who are members of our amazing team.
So starting with 2 weeks ago, Monica Marlowe wrote an Inspire Confidence on managing your books. This is she has 2 meanings from that. One is managing your game balance, making sure that you have the right options in your group, that people do not feel overwhelmed, or that the GM does not feel like too many options are limiting the way they could challenge the players. But also physically managing your books, because if you are going to different game places and they aren't the people that have your main library, that's a lot of books. That's a lot of weight. And so she just talks about some of the options for how to manage in every way having a large collection of gaming books out there for this game. Then in Monstrous Physique, Luis Loza statted out Ganon, the classic Zelda villain. Perram, you're more of a Zelda fan than I do. Do you have any thoughts on Ganon, Lord of Darkness, the CR16 creature Luis statted up for us?
Ganon is a really, it's a good build. It definitely emphasizes the more corrupted evil Ganon as he's supposed to be. The thing about Ganon is he starts off as a person, and then by seeking power, monstrous himself out.
Tale as old as time.
No.
Song as old as rhyme.
It's just the beast. Following that, Alex, you designed the Protection Wawadin, which I admitted when I shared it that I had no idea what you were talking about until I read the first paragraph. What is the Protection Wawadin?
It's a build for protection paladins in World of Warcraft, hence Wow-adin.
Which is way more of a rhyme than you would expect it to be, because you've replaced PAL with WOW. And yet, perfect.
Yes. And it came around because I was contemplating building my Blood Elf Paladin and Society as just like a regular Elf Paladin, and I wanted to see how close I could get. I'm not sure that I'm 100% satisfied with what I got. It might be as close as you can get, but I still have some other options I want to look through first. But I'm pretty pleased with it. I think it came out pretty good. There's a lot of things that you can do in World of Warcraft as a paladin that just Pathfinder doesn't support. It's differences between the system and the class design and whatnot.
You mean wreath the immediate ground around you at all times in holy fire? It's not something you can easily do in Pathfinder?
I wish, man. I would consecrate everything. Or how you really want judgment, but the Inquisitor's judgment is something that you would never scale and can do once per day.
Mm-hmm.
And it really doesn't fit the role of what Judgment is. Judgment is a ranged attack paladin sad that just like conjures hammers out of light to bash people.
I want that.
I want that too. I wish
There
you
is
could
a
just.
Wait, there is the you can make a hammer out of light that bashes people's spell.
Yeah, but it's only once.
Spiritual weapon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't do it as much as I want. That's what I need. I need infinite bashing.
I
Also,
want
I
an-
was picturing it raining hammers down, like
Oh.
hundreds of them.
I want an ability that you can take in place of a mercy, where I can throw away lay on hands use and bash people with a magic hammer. That's made out of light. I think that it's plausible. I think I can turn lay on hands into a resource that fuels crazy cool powers. I don't know if people will like me for it, but I probably could. I have a line of products that I could do that in now, actually.
After that, James, for his Code Switch blog, just wrote some Pathfinder haikus. I'm not sure. Actually, I know what inspired it. He said he found a Reddit thread that's gone. It's died. It hasn't been posted in a long time. And it was mostly negative, so we wanted to put a more positive spin on it. And he just made haikus for all of the base classes from the core rulebook.
Yeah, he messaged me like that Monday night and was like, I just realized if I take these haikus and put them on pictures of the iconics, they'll look so much better. And I was like, okay, why are you telling me this? You know how to make stuff with Photoshop. And I was like, okay. I ended up doing it in InDesign because it was easier. But yeah, because InDesign, like, it'll just snap it right to the center of the picture. I think you can do it in Photoshop too,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit quicker in InDesign.
So whatever
All right,
you're
we
most
have a-
comfy in.
We have a reader that wants me to write a lay on hands that lets you cast Obliterate Wounds.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you, Imperasaur. Thank you. But continue with the articles, please.
Yes, keyword design. My next keyword was resilience. As people know, I write a blog where I create a mundane item, a magic item, a feat, a spell, and a class option based on a single word suggestion, in this case, resilience, by reader Aaron. And I had a lot of fun with this. My mundane item was hardening varnish. So you just varnish your weapons and it makes them a little bit, it increases their hardness a little bit. It's not an area of the game that needs much more rules to it, but as I explained in my notes, I really like the visual of the fighter polishing his weapon every morning while the caster's memorizing their spells, and this gives a little mechanical advantage to it.
I thought Games Workshop discontinued Ard Coat.
Maybe. Games Workshop discontinues and then undiscontinues things all the time. Calls them limited releases, pretends this is your only chance to get them, and they come back a few years later. You can't trust Games Workshop, Perram. That's what I'm saying.
He's not wrong, you know. You'll never find a greater hive of scum and villainy than Games Workshop HQ.
Now, to be fair, my experience with them is at least 10 years old now. It's possible they've changed. It's
don't-
possible they haven't.
My experience with them is about 6 years old. I can tell you that in that 4-year gap, they did not change.
Yeah, I believe it. There's some other cool options here. I like that I named a spell Lifeline, continuing my trend of throwing in G.I. Joe references. Actually, my feat was Death Dodger. Dodger was a member of Battle Force 2000. So technically, there's 2 G.I. Joe references. One, I didn't even notice. But actually, I'm amazed there was not a spell called Lifeline already anywhere in the game. No one else is amazed by this? I mean, it's Lifeline. It's a common expression. No one seems as amazed as me.
Sorry.
No.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine then.
Niches we never get filled.
Oh dear.
After that, I took over for Anthony in Behind the Screens and basically told the same story I told today about the TPK. But I also talked about my experience TPKing a party as a GM. So I was comparing, with no real moral of the story or anything, just comparing a couple of different TPK or mostly TPK experiences I've had. It's a great, fun read.
Murdering everybody. The Ryan Costello way.
Next up, there is a Wandering Monster from Louise. It's a Dragon Lair. It's a classic encounter zone. I don't think we really need to explain more than that. It's a dragon lair.
If you want to know more, go read it yourself.
As usual, you get a cool map and stats.
Gemming 101. Why not every encounter needs to be a bloodbath, Alex?
Yeah, so that's my story that I mentioned about me tweaking around encounters throughout Strange Aeons. Like, essentially what happened was I wanted to make things a little bit trickier for my players because there's 6 of them, and they were just blasting through everything in book 1. And I switched around a couple encounters, and they took longer, but I didn't really feel like they were great, and they didn't have a good plot justification for why they were so hard other than they were difficult. And then we got to a different encounter that I realized that I hyped up a lot, and I tried a similar approach of making it more difficult because like there was so much hype. I didn't want to like destroy that hype engine. And so I did a bunch of really small things that I outlined in the article. And what ended up walking away was like a realization that it matters which encounters are hard and which ones aren't in terms of your players' morale. If an encounter is arbitrarily hard without feeling like it matters to the overall scene of the adventure, then it's usually not a very satisfying challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But if the encounter has a gravity to it, then it's totally worth it. And you can read more about that in that article.
Next up, Andrew, your burst of insight about campaigning with pre-generated characters, pre-generated PCs.
Right. This is another continuation in the little bit of world building I've been doing with the maze, which, if you haven't been reading it, is basically a kingdom of minotaurs. They're tyrants, and they rule over the actual physical maze that everybody lives in. And it came about because I was looking at trying to figure out how you would handle characters in there, and settled on the idea of maybe doing pre-generated characters for the PCs from the get-go, so that you could lay them out sort of like you do in video games, where you see that you've got a tree, there's of things that the players can choose from, and be able to plan what their abilities might be. And dig into parts of the story that you might not otherwise normally get into by knowing the storylines in advance. It's not for every group of people. There are a lot of games that have been doing it for years. I mean, it's sort of like the original Dragonlance novels and adventures. You had Tanis and Raceland and everybody, and you could play those characters through the adventure, and it would actually tie them in to the events that were going on differently. Indie games have been doing it for a while, and even Jason Bullman's doing it with his Eventide. I can't remember the
Right.
Flames of Eventide?
Yeah, I had it looked up, but I had.
Yeah.
Crypt of the
But-
Flame?
No. It's his Patreon.
It's his Patreon.
Yeah,
Edge
we had
of Eventide?
Edge of Advent. Yeah.
We had him on the show a few months back when he first started that campaign to talk about it. It's really interesting where he talks about the advantages of playing a pre-generated character and how that is able to tie into the story a lot stronger than even the campaign trait options and the APs manage. Again, like I've also played a lot of games that do it. Like Lady Blackbird is a really fun indie one-off that not only has a set group of characters, but it also has like a set plot. Like every Lady Blackbird has like a set group of characters and a set plot archetype that you riff off of. So it's like it's kind of like improvisational Harlequin plays where you've got these set pieces and arcs that the audience even knows and the players know. So even as you repeat it, you use the archetypes and the tropes and the expected events as part of the meta story, and as you change it, as you repeat it, is part of the gameplay.
Yeah, it was one of the ones I referenced in my blog. But ultimately, the end piece here is that I present a single PC build that you can advance. It's a halfling rogue who is ostensibly the leader of a little bit of a rebellion, sort of a Robin Hood sort of character. If the leader of Robin Hood's men was actually Little John, and he was actually little.
Literally, Little John.
Yeah.
Literally doesn't mean what it literally meant anymore, though.
Yes, but this time it literally does.
Stop ruining the puns, Perram.
I did appreciate you bring, like, normally I would scoff at the idea of not being able to make up my own character, but you convinced me to, pay attention to your article by bringing up video games, because it's true. Not only do I let the video game character be whoever it is, and then I just get into his shoes, there's some video games I specifically buy to play that pre-generated character.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't work with every group. And as I was prepping the blog, because I've got a group of players who play with me regularly, I said, would you do this if I actually finish this blog all the way out and get all the way through all the things I want to do in the maze, and then I continue it on in my own time to finish it? Would you play this if I made these characters? And every last one of them said yes.
Cool.
Without even knowing what characters I was presenting.
That's cool.
So, I mean, it's one of those things. You have to have the right group of people. You have to have the right trust with your GM and your trust both ways, players and GMs. But this whole thing with the maze has been, how far can we push Pathfinder, keep it Pathfinder, and yet do things that are new and different with it mechanically, and pushing GMs to look at how they might look at running their games just a little bit differently.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting series. And do you know how many more installments it'll have?
There are at least 2 more, and I may put a break in between any more after that, just so I'm not writing the same thing for, 3 months. But yeah, there are a couple more, and I try to keep them relevant to other things rather than just focus on, that piece of it allows me to carry over certain themes, but I like to be able to change things up.
Yeah, I think each one stands
presentable
on its own. You don't have to be following the series super closely to understand any given installment of the series.
Yeah.
Next up, just released today, Dear Dova Queen. She answers a question about characters that are a GM asking about their players just not following the plot hooks. And what I like about her answer is that it's not exclusively telling the GM how to get them to take the hooks, but also how to accept that if the players aren't taking the hooks, they're just not interested in those hooks.
Mm-hmm.
And normally that would be the last one, because that's everything that's been published in the last 2 weeks. But I do want to bring attention to tomorrow's Inspire Confidence. It's by Monica. It's called Standing in Solidarity. And it's very much about things that are happening in the now. It's things that are happening with Green Ronin and with Monica, a different Monica, Valin. Shoot, what is the full proper pronunciation of her name?
Valentinetti, I think.
Valentinelli, yeah.
Valentinelli.
So I want to bring specific attention to it now, because in 2 weeks when we shout out to it, it won't be as current. So I do recommend people check it out. You'll catch up on some stories that are happening right now. And it just kind of reaffirms why we have the stances that we do on the network.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's a really important piece, guys. Check it out.
And finally, I'll just give a quick shout out. Anyone that is going to Chicago for C2E2 tomorrow, or this weekend, I will be there. I'll be with Blind Ferret at the booth. So you can go to booth number 1453, and I will try to sell you some stuff. But you can also say hey.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to walk away with at least 3 pieces of Richard-themed merchandise.
Oh, they have plenty to choose from. So, Alex, thank you for joining us. Is there anything you'd like to say to people before you go?
I don't know. I'm trying to decide. When Bestiary 6 came out, I got super inspired by one of the monsters in it, the Krampus.
Oh no!
And I've been putting together like this outline for an adventure that's kind of Home Alone themed. And I had time.
I did not know about the Home Alone element.
Oh, this is.
Oh yeah,
interesting.
It's great. I love it. So there's one part where the PCs kind of get in and over their heads, because the idea is that they're level 8 PCs that have to deal with the CR21 Krampus. And I wrote a set of rhyming haikus to go for it. Like, as in, like, when they come in, like, the haikus kind of explain what's going on. And can I share those? Because I'm really happy with them.
Well, will it spoil things?
I don't think so.
Share one.
Yeah, share one.
Well, they're a set. They go together. Like, you need both. It's
Okay,
like a
go, go,
two-parter.
All right, go for it.
Sun hath set from sight, signaling the Krampus night. Mortals die from fright. Fear his baleful bite. Hateful chains that tangle tight. Daystar ends thy plight.
Well, now, as an English major, a rhyming haiku just blows my mind.
Well, Monica said that it makes her vomit all over the place, and she doesn't even have a English degree. So that doesn't blowing your mind is probably better than projectile vomiting.
Yeah. Well, not for me.
Now, before we go, we have a new listener that popped in at the very end here, and I hope they're still in the chat. I don't know. They asked this question a few minutes ago, but it didn't. I couldn't interrupt the thing. But they ask, and I'm only doing this because they're a newbie. Hello, everyone. I'm a Pathfinder player. The name is Shokanashi, and my group thinks I'm insane for playing a wizard that only uses pits. What's your thoughts on extra-dimensional hull strategies? Thanks, faithful Twitch viewer.
I can tell you I'm not a fan. I actually think the pit spells have a lot of issues and should all be at least 1 or 2 levels higher.
They are extremely effective. This is an extremely effective strategy for a wizard. You should probably open yourselves up to using other spells besides the pit, but the pit spells are great. They're probably a little OP, but if there's an effective strategy to be a great wizard, keep in mind that things that fly, you're going to kind of be having a bad time on. So it's not so great against ghosts or things way bigger than your pit or
things that teleport at will.
Or anything that
Things that teleport at will are
teleports.
stuck in the pit because it's an extra dimensional space and you need to plane shift out of it.
No.
This is one of the issues with the pit spells. You can teleport to the top, but then you still need the strength to be able to climb out while you're getting pegged by people sniping you from near the edge, if not the edge. And you also fall down, you lose your turn, you fall prone, so that means you lose that much more of your next turn. You're out of the combat, you're taking damage.
You're safe.
Too much is happening.
You're safe from the snipers. If you're
Because they can't stand on the edge without falling in?
Yeah, because Pathfinder rules are that if you're more than 1 square away from a ledge, the ledge blocks your line of sight of things below it.
Okay.
And
I
if
will
you're
be more
next to the
strict with
pit-
that the next time a pit shows up in my
if
game,
you're
but
next to the pit, you risk falling into it.
you risk, but not guaranteed. So
Right,
if
right.
somebody is confident in their reflex save, and if they're a sniper, they probably are, you can still be pelted by snipers shooting
But-
down on you.
But there's always that at least 5% chance that they're taking that it suddenly becomes the ranged character one-on-one with the melee monkey in a pit and no help.
I don't think that balances the spells out. I think that they do too much and they're problematic.
Yeah, they're a little bit overtuned, but from a point of view of a player, it's a sound choice. As a GM, I don't like it.
Where do you get you can't teleport out of a pit from?
Because it's an extra dimensional space.
That doesn't
You can
matter.
teleport out of a regular pit, but not a pit spell.
Yeah, but the teleportation spells don't prevent you from teleporting from out of the pit. The conjuration spells don't have extra dimensional presentations in their clause. The pit is still on your plane, so you can teleport out of it.
All right, we'll have to look into that because that's something that I've had pointed out to me. If you can,
I'll see
disprove
what I
it,
can do. It is 11:30 at night. I do not think I can disprove it right now.
I want it by midnight. Go.
No, I refuse. You can't make me.
You know you won't be able to sleep until you disprove this.
I'll take NyQuil.
You know what
All
I've
right,
used
well-
that's effective?
What?
The thing at the bottom of the pit, creating an image and shooting it out of the pit.
I am flying above the pit.
It works.
wasting
It's effective.
spells on it.
It's effective.
Well, thank you once again to Alex and Andrew for joining us. Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Perram.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.